Oh, hello everyone. Now you might notice there's only two of us. I have a funny feeling that either Firebird said he was just going to go have a shower, so he's either slipped in the shower, in which case someone should, I don't know, go check on him, or he's gotten confused by the whole wacky South Australian daylight saving time zone stuff. So he may be jumping on at some point, or he may not. We'll find out. But in the meantime, I'll still be joined by Nickel. So hello, Nickel. Welcome back. How you going, bro?
I'm okay. It's been busy. End of the year. We're obviously just discussing off camera that end of the year. So hey,
Here he is,
Hey.
big fella.
I made it. I do apologize.
It's all good. Let me
I
mess
do
around
apologize.
let me mess around with your audio for a sec. Hold on. Bam, bam. Talk a bit, Brock. Oh no, can't hear
that
you.
audio's gone.
It's just gone. Try again. Hello. Technical difficulties. One moment.
I need the little, technical difficulties sign.
Yeah, I need a technical difficulties. Yeah, Brock, maybe try reselect your maybe unselect and then reselect your microphone, and we'll see what happens.
Money for anybody who can get a photo of Mopar fixing a pack with experiencing technical difficulties that we can put up.
True. Put it on the memes page. Man, that thing doesn't get used enough. Y'all need to start pumping them things out. All those young whippersnappers out there, get around it. All right, how you going, Brock? Cool. Anyway, while Brock's doing that, obviously we're gonna be covering all the teams. We're gonna try and do it in one sitting, and my hope is to do it within 2.5 hours. That might be optimistic, especially with technical difficulties to get us started off. But yeah, we're gonna be putting on a pace. All right. Yeah, we'll start off from the 14th place team. We'll work all the way down to the first place team. And yeah, I don't know. Have you got anything you'd like to say, Nickel, before we jump into it? Obviously, Brock's doing his
Hopefully
thing.
we'll get Brock. Oh, we've got him back now. That's great. Well,
Is that any better?
That is so much better.
Cool. I don't know why it deselected my actual mic.
That's
and then
cool.
wouldn't let me reselect.
Yeah, that's cool. You also sounded like you were talking through like a tin can when you first joined in. It's
It
much
would have
nicer
been
now.
the webcam.
That's awesome.
Wax messaged me.
Okay, cool. How is the audio levels between everyone? Can everyone say I love laser tag?
I love laser tag.
Nickel, you go as well. You both said it at the same time.
I love laser tag.
Does everyone sound about even? And if so, we'll jump into it. Just because you'd have to listen to me. Get out of town, bro. Get out of here. You're not coming on the stream ever again, Wax, with that kind of attitude. Goddamn, boy. All right. Cool. Well, yeah. I was just saying, Brock, we're just gonna go through all the teams from 14th to 1st. I want to aim for 2.5 hours, so we're gonna smash them out. You ready to rumble?
Let's do it.
Let's go. Cool. I'm gonna share my screen.
14th place. Half fast.
Lovely Google Slides. And yes, 14th place. Predicted in 14th. We have half fast. Now, actually, for the first 6 teams, I think we got them dead right, which was pretty awesome. So go us. Go Ellis. Go Ellis predictions. What?
We broke you. Just saying. We'll come to that.
We'll get to there in a sec. Cool. So on half fast, we had Red Devil, Cool Bean, Broidizzle, Bluely, and Oddity. If any of the aliases look like they're appearing weird, I'm guessing it's because of the old Nexus tag thing, and they had to shorten the alias to fit within the 8 characters or whatever. So I haven't spelt them wrong. This is just how they were on the Torn thingy, and I just pumped them out as they were. But anyway, Who wants to talk about half fast? Any takers to get us started off?
I played them a bunch, so maybe I'll start.
Yeah, all you, Nickel. What can you tell us about how the half fast team played?
So, I mean, I need to look back at the scores technically, but I'm pretty sure they came out of the gate actually better than I think some people expected. They didn't get, like, from a play perspective, I think they did. I feel like this isn't a team that I believe has played together at this level a lot. So I think that was probably the biggest takeaway. It's just that slight level of inexperience at playing perhaps at the pace.
Well, this would be a mixed team as well, right?
It was, yeah, and that's part of it, right? So you've got inexperience as well as obviously having to overcome that mixed bag kind of components when you come into a competition. So that's probably the two big things that you stick out right away, right? And they're so hard to get over. I mean, we saw problems with it in some of the other teams as well when they were playing with people from different states and different teams on the one team. So that never goes away. I feel it only gets better with time and experience, which unfortunately for these guys is something that they don't have yet. They'll get it in time. And I think I can relate to this a little bit because I think nationals, like the hitting power, like that actual ability, like to take, I guess those push of those bases and break them and actually get them in and consistently through the competition was probably the one thing that at least we found when playing against them was something that we're like, okay, we can probably break that base, or we're not as afraid of seeing. But then there was moments where we just were like, oh, we just got smashed by them, and we did. We lost these guys really badly in one of the games, and we had no idea. We were just like, oh, we couldn't do anything. So sparks of like super energy in there through the competition, just a little bit inconsistent.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, like the experience levels between this team is very minimal. So I mean, they're like, yeah, there's a reason they were predicted in 14th. Like being a mixed team and like one of the most inexperienced teams, you kind of, it's to be expected. That being said, obviously Red Devil being one of the more experienced players on the team, pumping out some decent stats. Obviously not quite reaching that positive tag ratio, but still like with an average score of like almost 8,000 and 1.6 destroys is pretty good. And an average of 1 deny per game is also good. That being said, the 1.2 denies against isn't so good, but you miss every shot you don't take, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, I think you could probably correct me if I'm wrong, Nickel, but like I would have expected that Red Devil would have been leading this team, going out on lead attack as well, trying to get people through bases. But it looks like, just based off the stats, wasn't having as much luck getting other people through their bases as he was like getting the bases himself.
I think Red Devil looked pretty good this competition. I think, like, especially considering it's had like, I can't remember how long off, but it's been a little while since we've seen him around any sort of Zeltak competition. I think he did as well as he could with the resources that he had with him. And I actually want to disagree on I know I brought it up, but the mixed team, I think this whole pre-nats is a good example of mixed teams aren't by and by a bad thing. I think like we saw mixed teams the whole way throughout, and a lot of them gelled really well off the rip and throughout the entire competition. So I think while it may have been a contributing factor, I think generally, I think that myth probably needs to be dispelled a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it totally depends on like the makeup of the team, right? If it's a mixed team of people with not very much experience versus a mixed team of every single player has like minimum 5 years experience. Like,
well, yeah, that's the thing. Like,
story, right?
5 good players on a mixed team are still 5 good players.
Yeah.
I think something to consider also with mixed teams is it's almost as in-game and out-of-game thoughts here. These guys, and I talked to them a bunch out-of-game and things, unless they hit it really well, they never seemed angry. They always seemed really chill. They were really happy and chatty afterwards and things like that. That morale there, which you sometimes you have those want to say conflicts or like the personality clashes in mixed teams versus the actual play ability. And I think the cohesion on this team was great, broadly speaking. At least I didn't see any cohesion issues with it. But to your point, they don't always go badly, but sometimes do they get the out of game cohesion as well as in game cohesion, or do they get one or the other, both, or neither? In some cases. And that's something positive for these guys. They all took a really positive attitude into it, especially with some of them having been in the first competition. So I think that they should be commended genuinely for that. And something for Red Devil as well. And we joked about it, you miss every shot you don't take. And clearly, he didn't spend the whole game. He did. And while he didn't spend the games just trying to push people through, he was willing to go get the points himself as well. And I think that's actually really good. There's an element of selfishness in that lead role when you've got when you are inherently that point scoring player. So, yeah, I want to commend him for that as well, making sure he's having those cracks as well.
Yeah, cool. And also, is Oddity the gentleman in the middle on the bottom?
No, that's Cool Beans.
Cool Beans. Shout out to Cool Beans for taking all the pictures, and also to the New South Wales LSA committee for letting me use them for the stream as well. The pictures all look really nice.
Actually, just as a quick mention to Cool Beans, fantastic attitude inside, outside the arena the whole way through. He was up here in Brisbane this past week, and so I've played a few games with him and gotten the opportunity to actually have a conversation with him as well. Fantastic guy.
Yeah, echo, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think, shall we choose a standout player, everyone, and then we move on to our next team. Unless anyone has anything else they'd like to add.
I haven't gotten a good chance to watch any of this team's games. I did go through a few today, but I didn't get a chance to see anything in particular. Does anyone know who their last line was? Because I can't tell looking at the stats, and usually I think you can pick it. So I'm curious if their last line player perhaps needs to look at the angles they're standing on panels or how they're holding walls, something there.
Blue Lee was apparently.
Right.
Yeah, it should be. If you are a last line player, go look at some of the games for some of the last line players currently there, because there are some particular players. I mean, people will always point you in the right direction that are phenomenal last line players at the moment. Brodizzle, I think I had a couple of chats to them through the competition. I think first competition for them as well. So kudos. Pre-Nats is probably one of the bigger competitions, obviously. So even Pre-Nats won. So good on you. Hopefully you haven't been scared off. Come back, keep playing. It always hurts the first one a little bit. Don't get discouraged.
Yeah, cool. I don't know. I'm gonna struggle to make again. I think I only would have played this team once, so I'm struggling to think of a standout player, but. We'll go with Cool Bean for being a cool guy and doing lots of pictures. And I think like Nickel said before, the team has to be commended on keeping up a good attitude, because I think it's very easy when you're one of these lower teams of the tournament just getting thrashed around by all these, especially during round robin where you're versing teams that end up winning and being the top 5. To be able to keep having a good time and keep smiling and stuff is really hard. So kudos to all of these guys for that. Has anyone got anything they'd like to add before we move on?
I'll pick my player as Red Devil.
Red Devil, yeah. The safe pick.
I mean, I think he played well. I think I'm going to pick on merit of play, and that's.
No, you're cool.
Who gets it?
Cool. Alrighty. Well, well done to Half Fast. Hopefully we see all of you come back playing more laser tag at another pre-nuts, and we'll move on to our 13th place team. Spare parts. Predicted 13th. On the team we had Shuri Kitty, Messiah, Trav, Flick, and Ness. So, I believe. I don't know who does anyone. Did anyone?
I'll jump in and And so I think Trav captaining for the first time, I think there was some shaky moments, but I think overall did a very good job of captaining and learning what goes into that role and taking it on the chin, being a good sport about it. I think Shuri Kitty in particular played really, really well, and I think that shows the quality of player she is, and whether people think that she's only just reached that or whether they think she's been there for a while, that's individually. But I think she's proved that she's a capable player in her own right, and individually she doesn't rely on anyone to make her look like a good player. I think she's proven that beyond a shadow of a doubt. I did unfortunately see a few like awareness issues with the team, and I think that's just trying to understand what other teams are doing in the arena at any time, as well as who's where. Because I did watch Trav under the base. I think shoot about 3 or 4 of his own teammates in probably 12 seconds and then lose a base for it. And it was just, I don't think any of that needed to happen. That was just one game that I witnessed, but I think I saw it a few times, just little like not understanding where people are or what's happening in any space. But
that's upsetting.
That's that's my thoughts there.
Would you put that out to perhaps a little bit of inexperience across this team from a calling perspective, like a game running perspective, be it a caller or just running last line? So because the team maybe has a little bit less experience in calling games themselves, because they're not calling them, they're not looking for those things and therefore not communicating it back. So it's almost an experience. It's an experience thing, but almost they haven't been given the opportunity to call games in their other teams that they might have been playing, and that's now translated.
I mean, yeah, maybe. I think learning to like run games, in-game lead or captain or whatever you call it, I think that's one of the hardest roles to learn, and to learn like to be effective in that role as well. I think everyone should try it and give it the opportunity. I think it's very possible. I don't know if any of these players run games for their own teams. Yeah. I don't think. I mean, Trav doesn't. Shuri Kitty doesn't. The others, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting, and for everyone on the stream and things like that, or might be listening back to this, if you ever feel like you don't, if you're not a caller per se, you don't run games, having a crack, and so programs just like Trav was running this for the first time, and yes, we saw that. But if you back in your own mazes and things like that, call games, because even if you don't do it traditionally, calling a game, forcing yourself to call a game, even if it's just a league or whatever, will teach you how to read a game better, and it will make you a better communicator after the fact, even if you're not calling a game later. I'm a strong believer of that. We can argue about it if you want, but like I think that practice is essential for younger players, or newer players. Younger is probably the wrong word. Newer players.
Yeah, I think everyone should probably League is like a good place to do it, or like in your own trainings, I guess. It depends what, maybe in the lead up to nationals and you're in your teams, maybe not then, but definitely in like the off season, I guess, or during League or something, everyone should have a crack at captaining. I think for me, for 2 reasons. One, I think captains get like heaps of flack after games, in terms of the responsibility of decisions that were made or losing games. I think that's something as an in-game leader you kind of have to take on the chin sometimes. You have to wear that burden sometimes. But I think I've seen it on a lot of teams where it gets piled on the captain way too easily. And I think everyone having their fair share of time in that role, they can kind of appreciate okay, there's actually so many things to think about, so many moving parts. It's understandable why it seems so obvious to you from the outside, oh, why didn't we make this decision? It's so obvious, but when you put in that situation yourself, it's a different story. So I think just for developing that perspective, it'll make you a better teammate for your captain. And then I guess onto my second point. Something that I think Aftershock used quite well at Hobart Nationals is just all of the players on the team trying to share some of that calling responsibility. So Fuggan was our in-game leader and he made all the big decisions, but just everyone having a good idea of like how to call a game, you know, you could kind of keep an eye out for stuff. And if you saw something, you'd be like, hey, fucking, like, should we do this? And then it would go like, oh yeah, great idea, and then do it. So you can kind of take some of the slack and like the responsibility and the pressure off of your in-game leader, which is just going to make them play even better. So yeah, definitely worth investing some time in for sure, even if you don't plan on doing it for a nationals or something.
Any further thoughts? Like players. I mean, we called out Shurikitty for. I think that's a really good call out. Really do.
Yeah, I mean that 1.7 denies average is pretty nasty.
She was doing that in Hobart as well.
Yeah, that's pretty damn
She
cool.
was. That was good. It was fun playing against this team as well. It was just genuinely fun. Again, similar to Half Fast, they were just a lovely team to deal with in and out of the game. Like, genuinely.
Yeah, Firebird, you got to pick for a stand-up player.
Yeah, I say Shurikitty.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to match that just for that 1.7 deny average. That's
I'll give Trav the runner-up for taking on the captaincy.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. It's a daunting role. Well done, Trav. Again, don't let it scare you. Yeah, come back, keep doing it. It's awesome. I'm excited to play against these guys again, in some form or capacity.
Yeah. Anything else we'd like to say about spare parts before we move on?
Nah, not for me.
Keep the ball rolling. We can always come back to people, individuals,
True.
as we compare teams.
Yeah, 100%. We're putting a good pace on so far. 12th place, we have Heretics, predicted 12. We're 3 for 3 so far. How good. On the team, we have Todd Tarko _, Skyros Varsity,
Varsity, I think.
Varsity. Sorry. And
How dare.
Fit. Yeah, did either of you guys want to take Heretics?
I'll jump in on this one just because I used to play with a bunch of these guys at leagues way back when I was playing in Albury. I enjoyed watching this team perform. I was a little let down with where their performance was, I think, given the time they've been playing. And I wonder if this is, I don't know what the state of the Albury training or league scene is. I've heard good and bad. So I don't know if that's a contributing factor, but I think this team could have been better than they were. That said, I think they did do like fairly. They had their moments where they showed up and had really nice takes, cracks, recracks, etc. I saw a lot of hesitation from them before shooting bases. Like they'd get in, they'd shoot a bunch of defenders, and then they'd wait 4 seconds and shoot the base and give everyone time to reactivate and run in and shoot them. I think I saw a few of them like not standing on walls properly, and I wonder if that's just like the Albury maze was rebuilt a couple of weeks before pre-nats, and they just haven't learned all the angles yet, and maybe don't learn as quick or don't know how to learn a maze, because I think that's learning a maze is a skill in and of itself. I was talking to Cyrex a bit, and she said something that I didn't pick but resonates with me and with another team, but she said they're a little guilty of sort of doing nothing and then losing the game. Like they start playing, they play the same game start to finish, and even when they're 2/3 through, if they're not winning, they don't change anything. They just sort of play it out and wear the result.
Yeah, I think that's actually something I know my team noticed with the Albury Outlaws as well.
That's actually the other team I was going to say about.
Yeah, where it's just, you know, they have their strategy, which for the Outlaws was like a really heavy defense.
Yep.
But even once the game was like drifting away from them, like there was no significant changes made to try and like catch up or get back into the game. And I guess, I mean, you know, if you've got your, you know, the better players above you or the more experienced players above you are doing that, it's kind of to be expected that would trickle down to like everyone else, right?
It's a really interesting take, because my one, having not played with these guys much before, was that they kicked off really well, and And interestingly enough, they gave us our best color in our knockout game, which was a really interesting thing. And maybe there's that little bit of play our game and we'll just do it and without thinking as much about what the other teams, both in and out of games, are doing. I don't know this answer, so an open question is the amount of comps these guys have gone to across the team there's not that many comps across the team, is there? From a
I mean, I think it's
point of view.
only Tarko and Varsity that haven't actually played a Zeltak. I know Todd, Skyros have. I know Pendragon has.
Pendragon has.
And I know Fizz has.
Mm.
And I know that they're probably on the lower end of going to comps, but they're definitely not newbies to smaller comps. I know they do some state comps. I don't think it's as this team, or even as I don't know how much of this team is. I know Todd and Skyros tend to play together, but beyond that, I'm not sure.
And for anyone who's in Heretics and listening to this, I'm doing you a disservice by asking that question, and I'm sorry. But yeah, I think that's probably the takeaway there is maybe just the speed at which absorb new information and then and change on the fly. Is probably the thing, and changing throughout the comp. 2-day comp is obviously not a long time, but there's definitely my team had some struggles against this team early on, and then by the end of it, we had a better go of it. So that usually comes from kind of just picking up the bits and pieces of how the different teams work. So
yeah. I think I also want to shout out that almost everyone on this team has a positive tag ratio. Like Pendragon is like very close, and Fizz is trailing a little bit behind. But I think that's probably even if like the Heretics didn't play crazy different to the teams below them, that'd be a big part of like what separated them from the 13th and 14th.
Well, that could be also why
and stuff.
Where the perception of them doing particularly well initially comes from as well, because these guys would have, at least the majority of them would have known the packs very, very well at the start of the comp, and as everyone catches up, that advantage trails off.
Yeah, for sure.
I wonder, and I'm now really intrigued as whether you go back and look at this, are we seeing close to all positive tag ratios there because they played an inherently defensive game? I don't know. You tend to get tagged more when you go out, right? Especially with Nexus. But if you're playing a defensive game, that tag ratio potentially is going to look a lot better. I don't know. It's looking at the stats for the stats' sake and going, are we seeing something there? But
yeah, I mean the destroy. This team has like a very low destroys average, so it kind of checks out, right? And I mean, you would expect the home team would have a better idea of like, where to push up for field points and stuff, where like maybe the teams below them didn't have as much of an idea, so they would lose out a lot on their tag ratio, just like getting caught out, trying either not pushing up for field points, or as they're pushing up, getting caught out, I can get shot from there on the way, and so yeah, that'd check out. That lines up. Who would be your pick for standout player? Firebird, I'll get you to start.
Todd.
Yeah, the Todd.
Todd, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some very respectable stats, right? Like a 1.29 tag ratio.
I think Todd could actually be a fantastic pick for like even Outlaws, and I'm disappointed I haven't seen him picked up by like one of the better teams within New South Wales. I don't know why that is, but I think he could do well.
Which one is Todd in the picture?
Center on the first row.
The first row.
2 thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Double thumbs up. Lovely. Yeah, I mean, Outlaws picked up Sirical, didn't they? Because they lost Whippet and they picked up Sirical from Sydney. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Well,
Sirical's comment in the chat was he declined Outlaws. We're not going to dig into this, I don't think. But Todd did play exceptionally. I'll double down on that. I also think Darko's tag ratio is something to be commended there. So good on you. Despite a lower lower score. Was Taco last line based on that statistics? Maybe.
I would say so. I think maybe someone in the chat can confirm for us, but I think that'd be a safe guess. And like what are the lowest base averages on the team as well? So that kind of checks out.
So again, we probably won't go into it, but so comments in the chat for what it's worth is it's difficulty to commit to lots of comps and events may have been the deciding factor for Todd not on Outlaws. Which is a shame, but also completely understandable.
Yeah, for sure. This is it's not a cheap hobby. We've all decided to pick up, especially when you start going to tournaments and stuff. I think I'll go with the easy pick Todd as well for my stand-up player, because those are some especially as a team like playing like super defensive, they're like very impressive stats. So well done, Mr. Todd. Nickel, have you got a pick?
I think Todd. Well, I'll double down or triple down on Todd. I just wanted to call out Taco. If Taco was last lining, that's a really nice score line as well.
Yeah, no, 1.5 tag ratio is it's quite lovely. There's some pretty crazy tag ratios this tournament. That being said, at the top end, but we'll get to that later. And Brock, you chose Todd as well, didn't you?
I chose Todd, yeah.
Cool. Have we got anything else we'd like to say about the old Heretics boys before we move on?
The only other thing I noticed was just a lack of urgency in some of their games. I watched one where like they had a recrack and then just sort of meandered into a base and got shot on the way through. And if they just moved with a bit of urgency, they get in for free. They get to hold. I saw a few things like attempting to take bases that just a lot of it looked like it lacked urgency, and they were just sort of walking about. So,
Yeah, I think
play seriously.
I think that's a big thing that a lot of like newer or like less experienced players struggle with, is like that timidness, because like obviously the as soon as you put a shot on the base, like that's like the single most stressful point in like a game for you. But when you approach that with like that timidity and almost an expectation that like, oh, there's lots of people, I'm probably gonna get denied, then crazy, you get denied. Oh, hello.
That's the alarm at zone 3 going off.
Nice. No, like a security alarm.
Yeah. It's probably a kid
good.
just pushed open the back fire door.
Awesome.
Sorry about that, guys.
No, you're cool. Yeah. Anyway, just being timid, and the reality is like, it is the most stressful and high pressure point in the game, but you need to approach that with like that, like Brock was saying, like that sense of urgency, and then grit your teeth and be like, I'm getting this damn base. Because if you don't, you're kind of just expecting to get denied, and then lo and behold, you get denied. So, put some pep in your step. As soon as you're in that base and you've cleared like one side, just shoot it and start watching the other one straight away. Don't beat around the bush. And I encourage you to do that a lot in your trainings as well. And if you get denied in training, it's like whatever, like
learn from it.
That was a bad time to shoot the base, or I waited a little too long to shoot the base, or I shot the base as I was getting into my position and I got shot from the other side, But just send it, boys. Just send it. I think I would say that everyone that's like very competent at destroying bases has been denied more than anyone else. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Anything else we want to say about Heretics before we move on? Nickel, you don't have to rush to zone 3 and beat up some kids.
Nah, all good.
Damn, that would have been fun.
VG has got it. He's rounded the kid up, so
he's already out back beating the kid up.
Cool, awesome. All right.
And VG is bemoaning the fact that every shift he's on, he gets multiple kids trying to get out through the back door.
Silly buggers.
So there you go.
Alrighty, well done to Heretics. Hope to see you all back for another tournament. And moving on, we have 11th place, Canberra Quackers. That's you, Nickel.
It is me.
Did you want to talk about
photo of me?
No, you look great. Do you want to talk about your own team, or do you want someone else to talk about you?
I'm happy if people have commentary, and you can be as lovely or as harsh as you want for the team. I've got a few things to say, obviously, but I'm happy to start with other teams' commentary. You guys commenting, if you would like.
You got something?
I got a little bit. I don't have a lot. I had a chat to. Is it Nivier? How I pronounce it?
Nivier, yeah.
Nivier. I had a chat to
Close to.
Nivier and Cornetto outside of like in the lobby at one point, and I didn't get to like interact with them in game much, but out of game they had a great attitude. I ended up showing them a couple of things on how to like manage a cross shot. So hopefully they can take that and learn from it. But like, just happy to have a conversation. Really eager to like take something on board, and I was really impressed with that because some people are just like, yeah, whatever. Anyway, my problems with the team primarily was like I saw a bit of a defeatist mentality in the game. So I was able to. I remember attacking your base. You were on blue, and I was able to walk between two of your door defenders outside one door and just shoot one, walk over to the next, shoot the next, walk back, and they're in the same spot. And I shoot them again. And I walk back to the second one. They're still in the same spot, and I shoot them. And we were able to get 2 or 3 bases as we were doing this. And I'm just like, there didn't seem to be an effort to try and dodge out of a shot or move, break line of sight, or and then someone's reloaded and come back to stand in the same spot and get shot a bunch, and it just could have done anything, but it just seemed really like, well, I'm going to get shot here, so I'm just going to stand here and get shot, which sort of leads into my other point. Was I felt, whether or not you think you did, I'm not sure, but I think you played for second too much. I think you need to just look at the game and play it for first. It's fine trying to recover for a second mid-game, but I think you went into games going for second from the word go. And I think that's not good for learning. I think I would rather take a third learning how to try and take a first than take a second because we played it for a second.
That's my thought. Mate. What you got to say, Nickel?
No. It's actually it's a fascinating to hear that. Given some of the training and things at home and some of the commentary that I have when we talk to the team. So that's really, really interesting. The movement thing at the start is something that people are working on, compounded by Nexus, unfortunately. So it's one of those things, it's a learning thing as well as being compounded by the difference in Nexus.
You can no longer stand next to someone and shoot someone.
Yeah. So not disagreeing with you there, but things I very rarely saw defense this tournament. So I can't speak hugely for what we did or didn't do. So, and the set play for second is an interesting one. We played a lot less for second here and this team's not obviously exactly the same as the one that went to nationals, but a lot less for second here than we did. But it's an interesting take and one that I'm going to store that away a little bit because I completely agree with you. Like from a learning perspective, I absolutely agree with you that, and we did far more, we have a tactic, we have an approach to get as many points as possible. We're just going to run that. Who knows what happens? And we did get a bunch of thirds by just going, we're not going to fundamentally change the way we approach this game compared to other games, even though the teams were might be higher. So we did have very conscious games where we went in going, doesn't matter, we play for the points, we play for that, which is something that we didn't do as much at nationals, and it burnt us at nationals really badly. And it is also a testament to this team. And your other point, I cannot be happier with the attitude that this team took to this competition. I cannot be happier. Couldn't have asked for more. And my standout player for us is actually Nivier or Joe, because basically last lined for the vast majority of the competition. Got super excited when she got bases, and we did get her a few, but her attitude was second to none. And it's that sort of attitude, a team with that sort of attitude that can go into games going, cool, we're going to play this for first, even if these two teams are teams that are going to be in top 10 or whatever, top 5, we're going to play for first, and they'll walk out that game having it smashed into a third, and they'll be okay. And they'll learn from it rather than just get sad. And this competition, in my opinion, proved to me that this group of humans can do that, which I was super stoked to see. So for all the other things, my commentary is Azorin. I think in the pre-show, everyone was like, we have no idea who that person is. It will depend on how well he does or doesn't play. And he obviously had a pretty impressive showing, to be perfectly blunt.
He's actually my pick for the team. So
yeah, he's an amazing player to play with, and looking forward to playing and seeing him play more into the future.
Did he open up on attack with you? That would be my guess, looking at like the base destroy average.
Yeah, so we had a really interesting one where we opened up with myself and Azoran or Aaron more often than not. Tactically, though, it was really interesting. We found that actually if we got Jimmy or that guy through a base early, so me taking him out early, even if just to get him the one base through initially, actually put the team in almost a better place. And you cycle him back, pull Aaron out to push bases beyond that. And we found that was actually, for whatever reason, and there's a bunch of nuanced reasons why that might have been the case, but that almost worked better. And whether or not it's a sort of a settling of Jimmy, that guy's sort of headspace, he's got a base call and he goes back into defense and he just racks points in defense. And you look at his tag ratio and that's very, very clear. But getting in that early base was quite a big part of that. And then Aaron and I could bounce between bases and push like that. So yeah, it was fascinating to see them play and getting to play around with two attackers. One of the things we kind of lacked at Nationals was a bit of dynamism in the attack comparatively. So yeah, it was really good to see. So thoughts from you guys? I could talk about these guys a lot, but I play with them and I've seen them change and grow over the last 9 months that we've had what I consider our new scene.
I'm curious. So like obviously Azarin had a 1.2 base average, but he actually had a 1.7 deny average, and I was curious what you would attribute a lot of those denials to.
Honestly, part of that is we talked about it before, timing and timidity getting into bases. And to be blunt, probably the fact that Aaron and myself actually haven't played together that much. So that sync you get with players, especially when you're attacking a base early on, if you've been playing together for a while, probably wasn't there. We had games that was just on point, and then there was a few games where it just wasn't. And that probably hurt that denials a little bit. We've also had some really rough games, I think. A lot of games where we only got one base early on, with quite a few denies. And so our rough games were very rough, which probably skewed these averages on a smaller tournament like this.
Right, like when you have your rough game, you get denied like a bajillion times.
Yeah. Which I'd rather people do, though. I'd rather people not give up and stop going for bases. If we're gonna lose, let's learn, right?
Like if I've already put like 6 shots in, what's another 4? Huh? Just keep sending it. I respect it.
My camera just died. Bear with me.
Excellent.
Oh, hello. I'm just gonna mute you for a sec because you've gone microwave mode. Hold up. Try talk again.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting. My camera just died. That's all that was, which is really interesting.
That's okay.
We got a very serious face frozen.
We got a nice freeze frame. Yeah. Lovely.
All right. Well, I'm gonna...
Cool. Anyway, I forget what I was saying. Yeah, I think. I don't know. Can you hear me, Nicole?
I can hear you. I'll keep on this without the camera, and I will try and change the camera over on the next team.
Yeah, no worries. I was gonna ask, in Canberra, do you guys train a lot of like attack versus defense type drills?
We do. Not necessarily with the whole team, because we do training before league, which unfortunately I often don't get to because I come from work. And we'll often do training post-league, so that'll be starting up more and more now, but it tends to be on the back half of the year, so coming into national season. So we do it, though.
I think just like on the top, like we were talking on the last team about like that timidity and stuff, like when getting into bases and just putting shots on. I think just grinding like a crap ton of attack versus defense is like an excellent way of like just sharpening your fundamental skills in general, like your physical skills. But on the topic of attacking, you know, it was just like a 5-minute attack versus defense. Like, who cares if you get denied? And I think really pushing the boundaries of like what you can get away with in attack versus defense. You get so many, and like with like, you know, if you have the bases reset up to 10 seconds or whatever, you get so many reps of just like and getting used to that timing of like, okay, I've shot this door defender. Okay, I've had to move around a bit, managed to get the last line, and then knowing whether you have time to put shots on the base without that first person coming in to get you. So yeah, I think that'd be a recommendation just for, in general, for anyone that's like feeling like that timidity when attacking bases, is just like send it in attack versus defense and do like a crazy amount of them.
Yeah, and I think it's good. The last thing I'll put in to this is the last 10 months for us has been really interesting. Obviously, we had a bit of a rebuild of our local scene over, and it really kicked off in sort of January, February. So I think I mentioned this at the after Nationals chat, but I have to remind myself sometimes that the scene as it is still quite young. It's had to rebuild itself. And we've now got a point where we're running between 20 and 30 players a week. So super excited to see what people with these sort of attitudes can do now that they've got a community around them with the numbers to kind of put proper games, do proper training, and do it against lots of different people, and having a growing number of people that are significantly better. Like we've now got, I mean, I'm not giving anything away here, but for Nationals, obviously our top 2 teams, we had more than enough people for our top 2 teams, our A and B team. And that's great. It's great to see for the first time in about 3 or 4 years. So.
Yeah, awesome. I think, did we already do, I think you guys kind of said your standout players, right? Like, did both of you say Azoran?
I did.
Yeah,
I think.
Nico, who was your pick?
I've got a bit of a split. I think Nuye gets my outstanding player. She did incredibly for her first tournament, and the stats obviously don't look great on the board here, but you could not fault her. Would play with her again in a heartbeat. And I do think kudos to him. Actually, Jimmy had a bit of a awesome tournament, honestly, at the end of the day, from a statistics point of view, especially on the pack-to-pack, especially given we haven't played Nexus since 2016, short of maybe the odd tournament. 2016 was when we switched from Nexus to H1. So, yeah.
Yeah, cool. You got that guy. I'll pick Azoran as well, just for I respect anyone with a high deny average just for sending it. Yeah, love a good cowboy, so good on ya. All right, have we got anything else we'd like to say about Canberra Quackers before we move on? Can we give Nicola a chance to fix his camera? Ah, cool bananas. Alrighty, yeah, well done to the Canberra Quackers, and we'll move on to our 10th place team, which we had Leviathan predicted in 10th. We're doing so well.
You don't want to talk about the predictions for the top half of the ladder yet, though, do you?
No, it's all crazy. It's all downhill from here in terms of predictions. But anyway, we had Tuscan, Nightmare Rose, Dart, Princess, and Yazbek boys. While we give Nicola a chance to talk about to fix his camera, Brock, did you have any notes you took for Leviathan?
Not heaps, but I have I was watching some games. Nightmare Rose had some really good movement through bases. I saw him picking opportunities to change positions really well, really intelligent, knowing someone's coming up at front, so I can move to and I'm safe because back is clear currently. I can move to this position and then I can deal with the front player safely. And so I saw a fair bit of that, which I was impressed with. I think Princess stepping down to this team was probably very good for them. I think he probably brought a lot of good insight from playing in the higher tier for a few years. I think they did have a problem with like too many people trying to be right rather than figuring out what the right thing to do was. And I think this was another team that had a bit of decision paralysis. Like they need to make a call to do something, and they sort of get stuck not making a drastic move to shift things or change anything. So that's sort of what I got. I feel like I played these guys like once, and then I didn't get to see them when I was reffing games, and so I think I sort of just dodged this team a little bit.
Yeah. I'm gonna touch my chin as many times as I like, Seth, and you're gonna have to deal with that. It's a beard ting. It's a beard ting. Anyway, yeah, I think one of the things I was gonna touch on with this team is, I think I saw so many like in that little like that corridor thing, like under the scoreboard, like to the mini goal thing. So many like just team blowout crisis meetings where people are just like yelling at each other and not being very nice to each other. And yeah, I think that's one of the biggest killers of a team, right? You could have a team with like a really high skill ceiling, but if their attitude outside of the arena is like doing stuff like that and yelling at each other, like it's going to be
a
really
recipe for a disaster.
It's a recipe, yeah, and you're not going to reach like your skill ceiling by doing stuff like that. So I think if I could say anything for this team, it would be like, I don't know, you guys need to start being nice to each other. I think a big thing I always say is just like remember that these people are also your friends. It's like, why would you talk to your friends like that? Like, even though like the stakes are high, everyone gets like really like emotionally invested in stuff, and when you lose, especially like if it's whether it's someone's fault or not, doesn't really matter. It's easy to get like agitated and stuff, but if you start taking it out on each other, yeah, no good. So stop doing that, please.
Well, I mean, if people are aggressive, people get defensive, and defensive people don't take anything on board. They don't listen.
Yeah, 100%. Even if... So I think the delivery is like super important. So even if, let's say I'm the last line, all right, and I get shot in the back because my front door defender like didn't comment, like they were just dead silent. Like they backed themselves to win a duel, they lost, they didn't say anything, they ran in and shot me in the back. If I'm like, oi, you bloody, I'm trying to be PG about it, expletive, whatever, idiot, why the hell aren't you coming? Like, we're just losing all these bases because of you. That person's not going to take that very well. And then you're probably just going to keep having the same issue because they're not taking that criticism very well, right? But if you're nice about it and you're like, hey, man, there was a few times that game where, like, you missed a comm on, like, the door. Do you remember that? And then they'll be like, oh, yeah, I was, like, thought I was going to win the duel, but I didn't. And you're like, yeah, that's cool. But maybe like as the duels happen, like, but just before the duels happening, say like loading front, and then I can be ready as the last line for something. That's going to be taken. That's a much nicer conversation. So
I was actually talking about this the other day with Shock from my team. We've got it down to a nice point where it's, if one of us stuffs up, the other one will say to us like, hey buddy, and they're like, yeah, I know. And that's all it is now.
Yeah, hey buddy, that's good. Nichols back. Hello.
Hi. How's the sound?
I'm gonna mess around with it for a sec.
I didn't want to jump in until we had a moment. I'm on a computer.
All right. Talk a little bit again, Nico, so we can see what the audio is like.
A little bit about people making sure you get to a point where you understand when you stuff up, and like, it's important, especially from training perspective, getting to a point where you can acknowledge it. And it's a huge part of learning as well. So acknowledging that I missed part of that conversation, so not 100% sure on the context, but
yeah, it was just an observation that we saw this team like having like big goes at each other outside of games, and how that's not conducive to getting any better. In fact, it's just going to make things worse. That was the gist of it.
That's an interesting one, and just something to note. I know we're just talking about pre-nats here. Pre-nats is a 2-day competition. That attitude, that translation of sort of that anger outside of the maze compounds over a 2-week competition. So
yeah, especially when you're stuck in the same accommodation with each other as well, right?
Yeah, it's particularly difficult to deal with over a long period of time. So for all of our teams out there who, might have big personalities on the team, learning how to deal with it over 2-day comp and learning how to kind of wash it outside of the maze is a huge part of making a successful Nats campaign happen. At least that's my opinion.
No, 100%. We've kind of talked about this a bit, but have you guys got anything else you'd like to add on that topic of being nice to each other?
Just do it.
Just do it.
There's no need to be a dick to each other. Pardon my French. Sorry.
Swallow your pride. Own your mistakes.
And that's own your mistakes is probably, that's from the lowest, newest player to the most experienced player in the game. So.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think hopefully if the Leviathan guys are watching, they've got a lot to take away from that. Have you guys got picks for a stand-up player outside of all of that stuff?
Yeah, I'm going to say Dart.
Dart.
I liked what I saw from Dart. I think he played well.
Nickel?
I don't know. Like, I mean, from an attitude point of view, at least in my interactions, Princess and Yazbek were lovely from an interactions point of view. But that was from my experience. Yeah, and kudos to those that defend. I'm a defensive player traditionally, not an attacker. So kudos to those players that sit on the last line.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know. I don't know who I'm gonna pick. I'm gonna continue my trend of picking the guy that's getting bases but also getting denied a lot because it's kind of funny. Well done. All right. Have we got anything else we'd like to say about Leviathan before we move on to the mess that is the top 9?
No, let's do it.
Let's do it. Leviathan, start being bloody nice to each other, or I'm gonna be upset.
He's going to be not very nice to you.
No, I'll be nice to you. All right. Moving on. In 9th place, Smash Bros. Predicted first.
How did that work out?
Also, yeah, they didn't have a picture done. So I drew something up in Paint.
I think we should continue the trend of drawing pictures for teams. I think it's really enjoyable.
It's
I get a kick out of it.
I put so much effort into them as well. I've spent so much time. There was like one, I think it would have been for a Hobart pre-nats, but for some reason I was drawing Archangels, and then I was like Shurikitty. I had no idea what Shurikitty was. I know it's a thing, but I had no idea. And I looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, I could draw that. And I spent literally like 30 minutes on Paint just drawing this one bloody person. So it's a time sink for me, but I don't know. If pictures don't get done, I'll keep drawing them because I enjoy getting creative and trying to mess around with it. Dan was very hard to do, so I just drew the most basic ass dude because Dan
gentleman.
is a basic ass name. But anyway, yeah, obviously these guys were predicted first, and they had a bit of a rough one. Did either of you want to talk about Smash Bros particularly?
I've got a couple of observations for it, but before we go to that, why were these guys predicted first? And I'm not having a go when I say that, but what were the things that I'm trying to remember back to the stream? What were the things that were said that would backed these team into first? Because it'd be really interesting. Obviously, they had a bit of a rough go of the competition. But did they play distinctly differently, for instance? Because I saw these guys as a very defensive teams, and now I didn't play them a lot, but I watched them. And that defense, I felt like that ultra defensive, approach to the games, I feel like almost cost them too many games. They just didn't get the points that they needed to actually win games.
Yeah, I think to answer your predictions question, I was one of the teams that predicted these guys in first, and a lot of that was just me remembering, like OneUp has actually like typically done like pretty well in pre-nuts. Like I remember Bendigo, I think they like stomped the first two. Hobart Nats, like they had a pretty good showing. They actually the OneUp was the only team that Aftershock like hadn't beaten by Cascade 2. We got our first win against OneUp at Cascade 2. So like maybe I was a bit biased because like they just kept like eking out wins on us. But I think
Achilles heel team.
Yeah. But I think for me a big part why I had them in first was it being on Nexus, because obviously all of those guys played like a lot of Nexus in Werribee when that site was still there, and they're all just like very brawly players, and Nexus is an inherently brawly system. So with those things combined, that's why I kind of had them in that first place. And then also just being at a competition where there was a lot of mixed teams, or like most of a team, but like they pick up a few newer players. Yeah, I expected them to do very well, but obviously they were struggling to really put it together.
I think it's like a combination of like their reputation is, everyone's remembering them from a few years ago. I think it was like Albury Nats was like where sort of Adelaide Albury Nats time was where they were really high and like playing very, very well. And I think they've dropped off since then. I think it's a little in conjunction with like the Victorian scene dying, and there's nothing happening there.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean we're seeing like the consequences of that. But I mean, I don't know, like COVID's sort of been and gone, and most scenes have bounced back. So I don't know why Vic has continued to struggle. I know like they haven't really I think they play at a time zone, and that's all that they've got. But yeah. And I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show nowadays, like as soon as you start getting to like the mid to top tier, it's really hard to compete there without being a team that's like training like at least once a week, right? It's really hard to keep up nowadays, and there's so many young whippersnappers coming up that are like really hungry to win and prove themselves. So yeah, it's getting harder and harder to be able to get away with just like not training, which is, yeah, it's obviously unfortunate that their scene hasn't really bounced back from COVID like a lot of the other ones have, but it is what it is, I guess. Did we have any other observations? I honestly don't remember versing Smash Bros very much as well either.
First time we've seen Dan in a while, and I think it is like there's definite rust there showing. Like he didn't look like the Dan I think people remember. I think they need to. I know this is like the OneUp thing, but I think they really need to chill on shooting bases. Like, don't just like. I know their thing is run in, put a shot in, and just play it. But like, I was watching them run in, get like shot in, denial, and then the next person's running in behind them and basically shooting the base while there's still active players coming up everywhere. Like, just chill a sec and like wait for a safer take, or like try and secure the base. Like, I'm still all for aggressive takes, but I think it just went a bit too far. Yeah,
I mean, they must have like the highest denied average of like the comp. Those are some big numbers, like 1.7 from Morrow. Like, even he did get 1.84, which is the highest we've seen so far. But yeah, geez, those are some big numbers there. And I think, did you from when you were watching, were they like doing stuff like getting shot on the way in, like before they get set, or are they just taking it bad times and having to watch like multiple doors at once?
Column A, column B.
Yeah,
it's like there's a combination of the two.
I think those are probably, for me, the two biggest. I have a video on this. Stop getting denied. check it out on the LSA YouTube. But for me, the two biggest ways that people get denied is they either A, put a shot on before they get into a safe spot and they just get shot like through the base from the other door, or B, they try to put shots on when people are activating or active on both doors. Yeah, it's like I've said before, it's like the most high stress, high pressure moment in a game. And if you're having to worry about two doors whilst taking a base, even if you've got like really good comms, you know, those bases are very impressive if you get them, but they're few and far between. Most bases that even the best attackers get is off the back of clearing one side, getting set in a position to watch one way, and putting shots on straight away. So yeah. Anyway, I'm sure the one-up guys know that, and they just decide to throw caution to the wind and cowboy it for a bit of fun. But yeah, I think the denies for probably, I wouldn't be surprised if that's like they were like in a lot of games. I can't remember what the scores were looking like, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were in quite a lot of games and they just like lost off the back of like losing steam, getting denied a bunch.
Well, I mean, it's like they've traditionally relied on their ability to just brute force a game and run through teams, run through bases, get a lot of pack in doing so to win games, and like we're just seeing that not work anymore.
It'll be interesting to see if they come back with H2 in this maze specifically, and we haven't really talked about the fact that obviously the next pre-answer is going to be H2, or we hope. And whether or not that return to the newer system is going to affect teams differently, right? And something that obviously didn't necessarily work for them this time. Will it be markedly different on the next one? I guess that's for predictions. If they bring the same team, and how much weight do we put on the system that they're playing on, combined with their style of play? But I agree. I feel like they didn't get points in defense either. I feel like they often had one or two players just not getting points through the game. And I think we see that with the quite disparate score lines, average scores for some of their players who were inherently defensive players.
Like the Werribee Arena was quite small. Obviously, like it's been a long time since they played there, but they did play there, for like a long time. And Wax kind of touched on it before, that it feels like the bigger arena wasn't really suited to their play style, where this was like there was a lot of long sight lines and a lot of long runs to be able to get to points where you can field point. And maybe like if the arena had been like significantly smaller, that would have suited these guys well. But that kind of checks out with like the low scores. But I mean, that being said, like OneUp also made finals in 2018 when the arena was even bigger. So there's that as well. But who knows? Anyway, have either who's your pick for standout player? Both of yours.
I'll say yeah.
Yeah, for the 1.7 denies against.
For everything else.
Right.
For clearly being everywhere in that maze, middle score average, got 1.3 on the destroys, got 1.8 on denies, and then 1.7 denies. The man was literally in every base, clearly, for every single one of his games. There was 3 of him and 2 other players in the maze. I like that one. There's some fun stats, and still with a positive tag ratio. Just.
I'm gonna go with Karachi just because, in spite of the team having a high base average, deny average, like the 1.7 is very impressive still, and obviously doing very well in his duels and stuff with a 1.44 tag ratio and a 10k average score. Very nice stats. Obviously, you'd want that denied against to be a little bit lower, but outside of that, some very nice stats. So he's obviously playing well. All the old blokes are holding him back. Sandbagging. Have you guys got anything else you'd like to say about Smash Bros before we move on?
Nothing else for this one, I don't think.
Nah, covers it, I think.
Fantastic. Moving on to our 8th place team. We have the Outlaws. So they're predicted 7th, so they were down 1 for their predictions. We had Campster, Pat King, Siracle, Invictus, Brownie, and Vexim. So I believe the same Outlaws as we saw in Hobart, except they've lost Whippet and they've picked up Siracle. Who wants to talk about Outlaws?
I had a couple things. So I heard them talking early on about using Camster as their last line, which I thought someone was probably just talking about it as a joke to try and throw team plans or something, because I thought that would be wild. And then I saw them run it as well. I think that was a mistake. I think it definitely hurt them. I actually think Camster is the best player on the team in general, like overall. And I think putting him in last line hurt them. I think like they picked Brownie up for Hobart and played Brownie as their last line. I think they just need to continue down that line. Or if that's not working, maybe they need to explore another option. I don't think Camster was the right pick for it.
Did they do the whole tournament with Camster in last line?
I think they swapped him out here and there, but I think he was predominantly their last line.
I guess he had a very low destroy average, so and a very
So you
He'd
look
sort
at,
of
you
come
look at
out-
those stats.
Oh, you go.
No, Matt. Sorry, I talked over the top. I was just going to say those stats look like a last line as much as I hate to say it. Lower score, really high tag ratio. So, go, babe.
And I guess
Go.
I can see a bit of the thought process. So it was actually Whippet that was their last line in Hobart.
Yeah.
And she was obviously, one of, if not the strongest player on the Outlaws in Hobart. And they had her in last line, and they got they had a bunch of good wins, and they were doing quite well. So I can kind of see the thought process of like, oh, Camps is also really good. We should put him in last line now. But I think Camps is too good outside of the base to have him in there.
I think he's one of those players that has a good mind for a float role or a mid role as well. I think a lot of people struggle to like get good value out. Like they might get good scores, but I think he also gets good value out of that role. Another thing, like Brownie and Vexum, I think were noticeably better than in Hobart. I don't know whether that's just a playing at home and more comfortable, or if that's like they've gone to Hobart, they've come home and they've taken what they've learned and improved on it.
Yeah. I think we actually touched on this a little bit before, Brock, but
yeah, it was the next thing I got written down. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you take it away.
No, this one's yours now.
Okay. I think something that I actually observed about the Outlaws, not only like in this tournament, but also like in Hobart as well, is they obviously have a very heavy defense style, field pointing and stuff, and they've had a lot of, success getting lots of field points, not dropping very many bases, getting a couple clutch bases. Sick. And if the game plays out like that, like a low base game, field point heavy, that's awesome. But it only works so long as the other two teams are like playing ball, right? As soon as the other two teams, they rock up to your base to attack and they go, there's like 4 or 5 people. Never mind. And then the other team comes and they go, there's 4 or 5 people. Never mind. And then they start attacking each other. And then they start exchanging hits on each other. And by the time you're halfway through the game, they've like got 3, maybe even more hits on each other's base.
And you're left well in third.
And you're left with like none, because one, it's like, I also released a video on this, attacking at the wrong time. It's going to be, if they're attacking each other all the time, it's going to be really hard for your attackers to be able to get bases, because it's just going to be like, when you're attacking a base at the same time as another team, it's very chaotic. You're just as likely when you're shooting defenders to accidentally give a base away. It's hard. But if you have teams that are just exchanging on each other, especially if they're smart, and then they go, I'm happy to just like, I'm not just going to force my attack on this heavy defense. Like, we got a few bases, field points feel pretty good. Let's just chill. Now you're in a situation where it's like, okay, we got no bases. Maybe we have some field points, but like, it's not going to be enough. We need to do something. And I think something we haven't seen from the Outlaws is taking that next step and opening up and going like super aggressive, which I think is like, if they can like get that next evolution for their team, like knowing when to start going super aggressive to like catch up on bases and stuff, knowing when to adjust, when the other two teams are playing ball, we can expect them to do quite well, especially in their home arena.
Yeah, well, if any year's their year, this is going to be it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Another observation, this is specifically from the actual games, and obviously we played against these guys a couple of times, I think, but not that many times. We've seen it with a couple of the other teams as well, but they've got 6 players. and we haven't really touched on this, but some of the things I saw observing outside of it just before they would go in, there was a couple of times where they didn't know who was going in, like which 5 were going in for the game. It's a small thing, but it's such a small tournament. And if you don't have that, I'd be very intrigued to see what the game distribution, especially for Vexen and Brownie, and actually the rest of the team as well. But when you don't know, like the game's about to start, you don't know which 5 of you are meant to be in the game. Especially as you get higher and higher into these levels against these other teams, there's precious time there that you're missing, and that sort of cohesion potentially bleeds into the game. I don't know whether or not you guys agree with that or not. Obviously, take 6 players to nationals. That's standard. These smaller competitions, 6 players means you obviously don't get as many games, like significantly. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think if you are deciding like who's going to be in the game, like as you're like entering the briefing room, I think it's a sign that maybe they're not talking about their upcoming.
Yeah, that sounds like they're walking in without a strat. They're going to stand in the base 10 seconds before the game starts. Go, all right, last line, you go over there, you go over there. We'll just
Like,
run a standard 2-3.
All right, we're doing the usual.
Yeah,
Yeah, all right. yeah.
Which is just under prep. Like preparation is king. Yeah.
100%. And actually, something I want to touch on, something I remembered. So I was talking about like your heavy defense and the other 2 teams are just playing stand and exchanging on each other. That's obviously bad for you, but something I saw happen quite a lot as well was the Outlaws guys would push out to field point. But I had it happen at my base where like I'm trying to I'm red, Aubrey's blue, another team's green. And I'm trying to defend out the green players that are attacking my base, and I get shot by blue people, and I go like, "Oh, that's interesting." And then green,
and then they let a green
base.
player in,
and so they're almost like digging themselves into a hole by doing that, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, maybe there's a strat where if like you get them to get all 5 hits on each other, they have no one left to attack but you. You can go out and do a like a bounce stump pain train, whatever you want to call it, but yeah, I think it's an inherently risky play, and it's also like they weren't making that.
It's just overcommitting to defense and not understanding. Like sometimes, like yes, you might drop a base, but there's value in letting 1 or 2 bases go here, like depending on the rate at which you're dropping them to make plays elsewhere.
Yeah.
Like insofar as like rather than over defending yourself into a corner and into third, like at the risk of dropping a handful of bases, you can draw some attack to your base so your defenders aren't sitting there idle doing nothing, or they're not being held back with 4 for 1 person or something stupid. And then your attack can go out as 2 or 3 or whatever it is and actually get some momentum and traction out there.
Yeah, and I think just by playing a bit more standard, like your 3 defense, like Brock was saying, it entices people to attack your base because they go, "Oh, that's doable," which then opens up at least 1 base, assuming everyone's playing standard. At least 1 base should be a green light for you to attack, where it's just like defenders there.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. So I think Outlaws have a lot of adjustments to make, but I think if we could give them anything, it would be. Yeah, if you're going to keep playing your defense style, it's cool, but you need to find like triggers or like little executes where you go like, bam, like a 2-3 man attack, get a base, just to like keep yourself in the game, or just add something else to it, or just play standard.
Well, I mean, like I'll give them credit. They caught me off guard with like that weird sort of 3.5 defense that they were running from red, and like they beat the crap out of us with it. But they tried it the next game we played against them, and I was like, well, this is what they're going to do, and they did exactly that, and we were able to play them out of it pretty easily. Yeah. So it worked for a game, but I don't think it works for long.
Something that we've said earlier for some of the other teams, it's that introducing a strategy but not having either the ability to change mid-game or change in between components of the competition, from round robin to cascade 1 to cascade 2. And not shifting that up, especially when you're coming up against a similar set of teams, or you've used it well against one team, there's that element of out of game. Okay, cool. And it comes back to that, who's going to go into the next game. If they're not having that conversation, do we really think they're having a conversation? I go, cool, we just smashed this team. They're not, and we're going to play them again soon. They're going to be thinking about how they lost to us.
Yeah,
So
sure. There's something there for sure. Otherwise, we've been talking about the Outlaws for a bit, so I'll get you guys to make your pick for a stand-up player, and then we'll move on.
I'll say Camster.
yeah, I mean, I'll go Packing here as well. It's got a very nice scoreline there. Clearly, was potentially leading their, like pushing their attack out, or at least out there for the most, given the statistics there. But also with a decent denies as well, comparatively to the team. So moving around the maze, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think Packing with a 1.7 base average is very nice. Obviously, just need to see more people getting that 1.3 plus base average, I think, or higher. I'll pick Camster as well for a bunch of reasons, but I think the adjustment I would like to see from him from an individual standpoint is he was one of the players that was guilty of like letting a third team through another team's base, which ended up just biting them in the ass. So be crazy. I have a video on this field pointing position breakdown. Be more specific about like who you're shooting and why, and be aware of the consequences. Like, sometimes you can weigh up the risk and be like, oh, we're up on bases, I don't really care if that person gets that base. Then sure, shoot all the people you want. But if you are in a state where you don't really want either team to get bases, then you have to be more careful and pick your shots a bit more rather than just shooting lights. So I'll pick Camster, but there's some a takeaway for him. Anyway, anything else to say about Outlaws?
No, sir.
Nope.
Bands. Moving on. 7th place, we have the Warriors. Up 2 from predictions. Predicted in 9th. We had Jellyhawk, Sega, Karen, Easy Points, and Captain Morgan. David Morgan. Who wants to talk about the Warriors?
I was planning on it, but I have way less than I thought I did on this team. I don't know if you've got more than I do.
Well, Steve Spawn, bro. Where'd that guy go?
He is vanished.
I'll be there in just a second, guys. Sorry.
I'll just say, I'll start off by saying that admittedly, for me and my own team, like Aftershock at Pre-Nuts, we played against Warriors quite a bit over the course of the Cascades, and we only got our first win off of them like in Cascade 2. Or it might have even been finals. Like they were I mean, they weren't like, we were getting like beaten around the bush, but they were squeaking out like a bunch of wins against us, and we were like, oh shit, these guys are serious. They're actually playing the game. That's crazy.
I think we underestimated them a little bit. I think we only lost once to them. I think I could be wrong on that, so sorry if I am. But I think there was like sort of similarly almost to Outlaws in a way, as I think they were actually really, really good at playing a straight game, provided the other two teams wanted to play a straight game. But as soon as that changed, like like they couldn't adapt, or they didn't have the depth to adapt or something, and they sort of fell away at that point. But a straight game, great at.
Yeah, and you look at that, you look at their stats. I think it's really interesting coming from perhaps the lower end of the competition, right? Where me and my team, like, it's interesting looking at this team and going, there's none of these players that are like, oh gosh, they're like, you think of them as almost being scary, too scary to deal with. But they're still super consistent. You've got a whole team which is a positive TR. What we're seeing there from a stats perspective, though, 1+ bases on most people. Captain Morgan obviously last lining there, but there's a lot of denies as well. Like they've also got quite high denies. Bar obviously Captain Morgan, who didn't leave their own base, and Jellyhawk, who managed to still pick up a 1.1 destroyed with a 0.1 denied, which is phenomenal statistically, I think.
That's crazy.
But that 1.3, 1.3, and 1.1, it was costing them some points. And I wonder whether or not perhaps, that's also part of where they sort of got stuck at this sort of 7th position is they were just losing slightly too many points. And I wonder whether or not the stats will bear that out. And I've got all the stats up off to my other screen. I suspect we're going to start seeing some lower denied statistics as we get, not to
yeah, I wouldn't
jump
be
the gun,
surprised.
but yeah.
I think, I think Brock, you were on the money on like they did play a very good standard game. The standard game was very strong. They took a bunch of games off of us. Jellyhawk proven that he's not just like a one-hit wonder, home site wonder. Those are some very impressive stats. So big kudos to Jellyhawk, like a 1.66 tag ratio, and he wasn't last lining. So
Yeah, standing outside a door.
dude is correct.
Yeah, he made me hurt a few times.
Yeah. So that's really awesome. It's like super exciting to see like fresh up and coming people just like going out and just, going like, who's that guy? Oh, he's been playing 10 years? Don't really care. I'm just gonna destroy him. Yeah. I think you're right in that when it was playing standard, they were pretty comfy, but once it fell out of that standard game, I think that's kind of what started happening towards the end of the tournament, especially, is like the higher tier teams were playing a little bit more defensive, floaty, less of a standard game. I wouldn't be surprised with that. I mean, I have the thing up here somewhere. No, I don't. Never mind. But yeah, I don't know. I just keep looking at Jellyhawk stats, man. I can't look away. They're very nice. They're very yummy. Yeah, I don't know. Have either of you got anything else you'd like to add about the Warriors?
I think I appreciate the position of last line here, and I just wonder their outer defenders, or if more your door defenders from it, must have been doing a really good job, because that is a steep drop in points into Captain Morgan there. And I wonder whether or not there wasn't even the attempt to rotate him out to get bases and things like that. I wonder whether or not that hurts the overall points of this team, because they've got a fairly consistently high average across the team with a really steep drop there. I wonder whether or not there's something to be said there. I don't know how much it affects it overall, but it's a bit of a standout statistic, anomaly across the team.
Playing against them, I never saw Captain Morgan outside of a base unless he'd been shot out. So there's definitely something there, but
I think there was like a lot of he wasn't able to stand on walls effectively. I know I was able to score hits on his phaser relatively easily, or a shoulder relatively easily on if I had a good crack attempt.
Yeah. Would be intrigued to see whether or not, if you get this team playing and rotating it, but even rotating Captain Morgan out for a base every game, and if you can get Captain Morgan's base to an average, that's an extra 3,000 points, 2,000 points probably coming out of that. And I wonder how much of a difference that would make to this team overall, whether or not that would punch some seconds that ended up in thirds, or even some firsts that they sat comfortably in second, but they could have pushed that a little bit higher.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is obviously everyone loves Captain Morgan, but he's never been a player when you think of someone that can put on a pace. He's never been that guy. And I think all the teams above the Warriors at this point were really good. All the players are very, very, very good. So I almost feel like if they had tried to get Captain Morgan out to get bases, it would have just been it would have been very difficult. They would have had to commit more resources to it than it would have been worth. Maybe bringing out a third to really help get him in, but then you end up dropping more bases at home. Yeah, I think it's just it's more and more important nowadays at the higher end of the top competition, where everyone on your team needs to be very good.
You can't hide a weak link.
You can't hide weak links anymore. So yeah, I think that's probably my thoughts on that. But obviously everyone loves Captain Morgan. I think what Captain Morgan brings to the team is like way more important outside of the arena than inside the arena. I think he was probably a big part of like the happy-go-lucky, good vibes with like the Archangels guys.
There's cannot say enough that means so much to competitions as well. But as we talk through all these different teams, there's something to work on there potentially, and we've seen players that go from being relatively slow players to very quick over time. So, being aware of it is the first step to seeing whether or not there is a way to develop it, if that's what you want to do. And I guess that's the other half of it.
Well, gentlemen, I'll get you to make your picks for the Warriors, and you can tell me why it's Jellyhawk.
I'm going to say Sega.
Right.
I think Sega had the best attitude on the team, and I think that is something that a lot of teams don't value effectively.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I feel I'm always saying one of the not standard people because of similar things. That's attitude. I actually think for this one though, I will say Jellyhawk, but I think this is because good on you getting out to another competition and proving that you weren't just a one-hit wonder in your own maze. And I think that's really good on a system. Again, I know Hobart had Nexus for quite a while, but good on you. Good on you for doing it, having a crack and coming out with some really nice stats. Time will tell.
He also went to like the New Zealand infights this year and also did very well.
Okay.
So like the guy's doing well on H Pro, H2, Nexus. Kid doesn't care.
Cool.
He just wants to shoot.
Good on him.
Well. I'm gonna pick Jellyhawk as well. It's hard to look past those stats. So big kudos to him. Well done to the Warriors. Damn you guys for bloody taking like 3 wins off of us before we could get you. Very nicely done.
I'm gonna have to get some notes off of them.
Yeah, I will. I'll have to get them to help me with an instructional for LSA. Damn. All right. Moving on, 6th place team. We have the Vodka Canberries up 2 places from their predictions in 8th. We had Gus, Danufa making his return. I don't know why I call him Danufa. It's Danufa. Garn, Shifter, and Dragon. Either of you guys want to get us started with them?
I don't have much noted, but I had a point that was made earlier. I was talking about, we were going over and talking about things earlier with a few other people, and a point that was made was that they're getting very good at using their reputation for dumping to their favor without actually dumping.
Yeah, it was...
Which is an interesting point. And I think I was aware of it, but not consciously aware of it. So
there is it's really, really funny seeing this inherent, I'm not going to say fear. Fear is maybe not quite the right word, but there's inherent sort of trepidation. Are they going to do something like that kind of thing? And the fact that it's such a thing now, it seems to be such a thing that teams can then play off that trepidation or fear. It's almost laughable at this point. But I play against them regularly, so it's hard for me to kind of to judge how that affects the decision making of other teams, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean they definitely do. Like they dump often enough to keep up the reputation, we'll say. Because I definitely saw games where they dumped at 0, like right off the bat, and didn't even go back to their base. So.
For this comp, I don't know. Look back, I don't know if they did this comp actually, guys.
They did. Yeah, they did against the meme pex boys, because I remember talking to them about it, and they were like, "Yeah, they dumped at 0." I was like, oh, okay. So they do it.
They still pull it out occasionally. I think they pulled
just
one out
enough to
against
keep
us.
up the reputation, you know. Otherwise, the stigma will go away.
Yeah.
There's also obviously they're not afraid of dumping out of the base, which leads to that mid game. Okay, cool. If the read is such, let's just move. Let's put 5 people into a base, or 2 and 3 out. Scrap our base if they think their read is good, or if the read leads to that decision, then they're not afraid of doing it. It's in the chat. I was going to bring it up. 2.0 for the denied stat for Gus. I think that's the highest we've seen so far.
It sure is, buddy.
So
Nice.
good on them. Look, I think, good on them for pulling 6th with a predicted 8th. I think this may have been as much from some of teams that were obviously predicted higher than them really having a couple of struggle days.
I mean, you got to keep in mind this team also got 6th, I think, at Hobart. Like
they did. Yeah,
I think we could have. I think this is probably falling short of where they should have ended up. I think they should have gone higher.
This isn't quite the same team, admittedly. They're missing VG and Finn out of this.
Yeah, I think loss of VG like severely hurts, but I don't think teams should be capable of trying to put all their eggs in one player.
No, and I don't think this team does. And I'm not just trying to sort of pull them up because they're obviously from my site, but I think what we saw here was Nuffa coming back was always going to be, I'm not going to say a gamble. Nuffa's a big character. So there's always going to be, given that he hasn't played in Canberra consistently, there's always that little bit of how is that going to mesh. Obviously, we've got the newer face from Shifter's perspective. I don't think Shifter had played with Nuffa up to this point. So, and it obviously worked relatively well. The team cohesion on this team actually ended up being really strong for the weekend. But yeah, it would have been fascinating to see whether or not Finn and VG, how that would have affected this team, especially on Nexus. We're probably not going to see it. Neither of them, VG or Finn, really played on Nexus. So it'd be interesting to see them at Nationals, because I'm sure we're going to see some combination of this come Nationals.
I think something we did drop a game to the Vodka Canberries during the tournament, and that was off the back of I think like we'll call them Dragons, but the Dragons team is a team where if you leave them to their devices, they can actually be quite dangerous and like sneak a bunch of wins. So the game we dropped to them, we started off like attacking the other team and trying to keep like a bit of a presence at their base, so they didn't feel comfortable to like leave their base with any significant amount of numbers, just like for fear of like dropping a base. But as soon as we lost that presence on their base, just like that one player, a brick wall is what we call them at home. As soon as we stopped brick walling the dragon space, they got like 2 or 3 hits on us by doing like the red to green push was like pretty good. It was like short, and it was like there was lots of strong points to hold and stuff. And yeah, they got 2 or 3 bases off the back of like their whole team just kind of like flowing through from red to green. And that was really cool to see. We were able to combat that eventually by like the next game. We were like, yeah, we lost that as soon as we stopped having a presence at their base. But still, I think it was, they do have that stigma of being like a very dump heavy team, but that was a really cool, like coordinated play. That was like, that's something you would expect from like a lot of it's like you would expect nowadays from top tier teams. Like if you alleviate the pressure on them, they're going to like flow and they're just going to start getting bases and stuff. So that was really cool to see for sure.
I actually think the addition of Shifter and like a dedicated last line for this team has been huge in like, even go back to Hobart, huge in like their success. So like, I think that's going to be my player pick there anyway, but I think that's worth noting.
Yeah. I think they do really well with a dedicated last liner. Who again we've talked about this in the past, but last liners are a bit of a different breed. Just mentally, you have to be of a certain mental sort of headspace to be a last liner.
Yeah, masochist.
Yeah, basically. I don't disagree in the slightest. I mean, I used to play that role, so I get it. And I think having one there on a team is really good. And it's something that perhaps the Dragons have missed maybe for the last few years, like a proper, mentally dedicated one. So really excited to see them. Really excited to see them place like this. And maybe we could argue that they should have maybe placed a little bit higher. You guys obviously predicted a slightly lower placement, but it's really good to come and see them coming off nationals with a slightly different team to this one and still placing into that similar spot, or exactly the same spot.
Yeah.
And I think that's really good. And from a site perspective, that's had a bit of a rough run of it. That's really nice to see. And from a morale point of view, that's really cool.
And I think on the topic of them maybe not doing as well as you might have expected, Brock, from Nats, I think the VG and Finn were both a very big part of this.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, Gus throwing away 2 shots of denials per game doesn't help either.
would have been fine if he got 2 destroys each game.
I don't know if that's fine. I don't know if I'd call that fine.
Okay, standout players. I think we both. There's a couple of us agree that Shifter, from a standout player perspective, taking on that last line, both hands around the throat of that last line defense, was pretty amazing. I'd like to call out Nuffa, and for those players who might be listening to this who have known Nuffa for a while, big character, fairly pushy, can read a game really quite well. 1.2 on the base destroys, 0.1 on the denied. And I think that's really, that's showing maybe a slightly bit more measured play from Nuffa than maybe historically people think of him. And I think that's really cool to see.
Yeah. I think, I only just noticed that. That's a very important, impressive, ratio of destroys to, denies against. I'm going to go with Gus, though, because him getting 2 shots of denial per game is very funny to me. I'm pretty sure that's the highest. We'll find out.
I hope for everyone else's sake that's the highest.
Yeah, I mean, if you get more than 2 shots per game,
right.
God damn, boy. I mean, 2 shot denial average per game, and you're still getting an average score of 8,300.
Just imagine if he wasn't getting denied like that.
Imagine. That would have been crazy. All right. Have we got anything else we'd like to say about the vodka Canberries before we move on?
No.
Happy to move on.
Alrighty. 5th place. Goodly Hands. That's you.
It's
That's
me.
you, Mr. Firebird. We had Lilbo, Shock, Pug, Salad, Firebird, and Polchrome. Did you want to talk about your own team, or?
I mean, I threw some shade at Quackers right off the rip, so I think it's time to return the favor, right?
Yeah, Nickel, give him all you got. Tear him a new one.
I mean, apart from
you did take a game off us.
We did actually, and I'm not sure.
Actually,
but we also
both
took
of you
a game.
did. That was the same. Where all 3 of us were in that game.
Apart from and that was one of those ones. Actually, ironically enough, we talked about this with my team. That was a game I believe we just went in and we played like we would for the games that we came first in as well.
That's
we actually
interesting because it felt very much like you were pushing us to both teams tried to push us to 3rd, and you picked a team you felt like you picked Aftershock to win from where I was playing from, and you played from 2nd. So that's from my point of view. So
I think
clearly you were more threatening.
What color were you? Do you remember?
Gee, I think we were blue.
Were we green?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, you may have just.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think so.
You may have just been unfortunate enough that you were in the base that we decided to hit. If that makes sense.
If it just works out that way, it works out that way. Ultimately, you played the game and did better than we did in that one. We suck.
So, but yeah, so that was an interesting. I do remember the game because we were like, the hell happened there? I don't think we expected to win that or come 2nd to that game. So things. It's hard to statistically. I think we only played you once or twice. Apart from that game, once in the turn round robin, I think.
We didn't play you in Cascade 2 as well because we dropped through Cascade 1.
What the hell? Did everyone else see balloons?
Where do they come from?
I don't know.
The hell was that?
I'm on a Mac, so
congratulations.
I think it may have been. I reckon it's because of my head.
Sure.
Oh wow. Okay.
they come from?
I think I was completely lost my train of thought. Yeah, so I think for us, looking at your team, it's hard to sort of sit here and criticize because we didn't play. I think when we played you, we walked in not expecting to win. As an expected third, I think we got an expected third against you half the second time we played against you. But it was interesting to see. It was interesting to see everybody on Nexus, I think, and that's probably this is maybe a bit more of a personal take on my part, because after the first couple of round robin things like that, it felt the field felt a lot more even, at least from my perspective, and maybe that's because I was just remembering how to play on Nexus, so I was playing better. But from that perspective, there. Something to be said about your team, though, is from a consistently high average, and you're starting to see this, and I brought it up with the other teams, right? You have not dramatically higher averages than, I think, which one was it? Warriors, which were 2. They had some, but you don't have dramatically higher averages, except for your last line, or Polkron there, has a significantly higher average. And I am intrigued, and we'll go back to that, right? Whether or not that makes a huge difference in having that that last line or
So
that
I'm curious, who are you calling as a last line there? Sorry.
Sorry, I said last line on the assumption that the last line would be the person with the lowest score, and that's a fallacy, and I absolutely get that. I would have argued, but Polkron's statistics there would make him seem like a last line based off a lower destroyed, but a really high tag ratio, relatively speaking.
So I actually
But
had
I'm not
both
100% sure.
Lilbo and Polkron as last line, depending on where we played and who we played.
Ooh, there you go. Okay, that's really
and
really
towards
interesting.
the back end, I think Lilbo ended up last lining most of our game. I had Polkron out of red. I liked the righty last line and Lilbo pushing rather than lefty under. So
yeah, okay, and that's a really. How does it work then for you guys having 2 people that you can last line? Or is it just people you tell them that you're doing it, and then
I would argue I have 3. I think Shock is a good last line in a pinch. I think Shock is just cracked and it's not allowed. But it's particularly with a lefty and a righty I can stick under was kind of useful. But the challenge was then figuring out who I want last lining, which base and why. And we did go through, if you look at the back end of round robin and Cascade 1, I think we suffered a bit, and that's where I think we got off to a good start. I think we picked up the packs quicker than most. I think we picked up the maze quicker than most, and then we didn't adapt very well, and we were like, oh, this sucks. I don't like losing. We better figure out why. And that's when we started learning why we like people in which position. And so I moved people around and played people in different spots.
I think something I would like to point out is there's always the expectation that the Helios babies or anyone that plays has only played with no trigger lockout, when they play whether it's Nexus or just any system with trigger lockout, that it's super punishing. But very impressive that because correct me if I'm wrong, but Lilbo, Shock, and Pug Salad would have never really played Nexus before, right?
Shock technically touched Nexus when he started, but it was only very briefly, and I don't think we're counting it because it was early league days when he began, so it doesn't really count. And then Shock and Pug Salad haven't touched it at all, so their first time was the Friday night training after we got we sat in the car for 7 hours and ran into training, and that was that.
No, I think that's definitely something. I mean, probably part of why. I mean, it's not a drastic difference, but why you were predicted a little bit lower than what you got was I think there was an expectation that between Lilbo, Shock, and Pug Salad, they would struggle to adjust to Nexus over the course of a 2-day tournament. But kudos to them, they've obviously got some insane tag ratios.
Yeah, I think that's part of what I was getting at before. I think the Nexus difference wasn't as harsh as everyone was expecting it to be. I think a good player is still a good player, and I mean, I think the mixed team thing is more a myth than I think people might crutch on it to go oh, we're a mixed team, so we suck. But I think 5 good players is 5 good players.
definitely.
I think that's fine. I think you're right, and I think this competition we're seeing it right, and we have seen it in other ones until it's not right. 5 good players until it's not, and then it goes south real quickly. But I agree. It has been really fascinating to see Nexus, because I do think a lot of people maybe put more emphasis on the lack or presence of Nexus, and I'd be intrigued to go back through to see the assumptions made about Nexus packs and things like that. But
yeah, it's just like I don't know. It's like anything when you haven't touched something for a long time. You remember, like your memory of things is going to be skewed. You go. For people that play without trigger lockout, with trigger lockout. So for us in Adelaide, play with trigger lockout. We go to a Helios Cup and we're like, oh, we're just going to be able to like double every single time. And then you go against someone with good timing and they're just like literally like black backing you, and you're like, oh, it's not just like that. I think it's kind of a bit of the same thing, like going from no trigger lockout to trigger lockout. It's like, oh, if it's trigger lockout, it's like it's impossible to win a duel. Which, yeah, I think it's a bit of that.
It does force play, though, I think, which is a really interesting one, because especially at the lower levels, higher levels, obviously, it gets a bit different. How do you reckon correctly that you guys didn't adapt fast enough? Did you guys?
I think we were just slow
fast enough. Yeah. Okay. So it was more you guys were slow off the mark rather than.
No, so I think we picked it up well. I think we came out. I think we won like our first 6 games out of round robin or something like. Or maybe we dropped one and the rest of them we won. We had a really good start, and then the back end of round robin is we took a bit of a nosedive, and it's sort of continued through Cascade 1, and then we picked up again. And I think like the longer the comp would have been, I think the more we would have continued to adapt. But I think we were one of the slower teams to adapt when we needed to.
Yeah, interesting.
What is there something in particular that you feel like you guys struggled to adapt to? Because I know for us, like we also had a rough Cascade, like the end of Cascade 1 and Cascade 2, and I think a lot of that was like the meta was shifting towards that more like less people just playing standard, figuring out the arena, and more the top teams doing a lot of like big like 4 or 5 man spreadies and like getting opportunistic bases and stuff.
I think we just didn't have answers to some of the like I don't think we took a game off you guys. I don't think we took a game off Rampatopes. We might have taken one off Memepex. I don't think we took any off Reload Cowards. I think the teams above us were better than us, but it was just like trying to figure out the answer to some of those situations. I'm also very used to having Cyrex tell me information because her analysis is very, very good, and I am unfortunately too dumb. So
I feel that, bro.
It's very nice having someone tell me the smart things, and then I can use that information.
Yes.
Is that that's a really interesting point. Again, something we don't really talk about a huge amount on this one. Smaller comps, obviously less time for analysis and things like that. Obviously, it's also harder to bring 6 players or an actual analyst along with you. It's a little bit more easier to do it on the larger competitions with 2 weeks and things like that. It'd be interesting to see if we see more of that as the sport grows, and hopefully as more 2-day comps crop up around the country. If we start to see the requirement for that, because you actually almost need someone to, so people can focus on the game versus people that can focus on the field. That's happening, given that it all happens so quickly. Well, that's me kind of thinking about competitions in general. Who's your player of your team, man?
Oh boy, man.
Yeah, and it's going to be on stream. It's going to be on stream, so they can all look at you and be like, why didn't you pick me?
Yeah, I'm going to say Little Bo, because I put Little Bo in so many different positions and he adapted so well. Like, one game I would have him last lining, the next game I would have him opening batsman, and the game after that I would put him here, and I just said, like, go and commit some terrible atrocity on that team over there, and he would. He was very, very adaptable. He did whatever I asked him to do, even when it was like I was putting him up against terrible odds, and I had a blast. I had a blast with all the guys. I had a great time.
Yeah. I think I'll match the little bow pick as well. I think he was a player I was like expecting to like struggle to adjust to Nexus, and he's obviously adjusted really well. And the fact that you were bouncing him around the arena everywhere, and he's still coming out like not last landing every game and still coming out with an average of 1.99. Like that's either his last line games or like the most insane games you've ever seen, or like most of his games he was just like he was keeping that tag ratio up. So very, very impressive, and like a relatively low like deny average as well. So yeah, I'll pick Lilbo as well.
I mean, if Lilbo had got 2 point something, I would have picked him, but 1.99, not good enough. Pug Salad, I think, also has a really nice stat line there, to be perfectly honest. Nice high average, good bases destroyed, good denies, would suggest that he's moving around the maze every game, and with a really nice low denied count as well, which means either well defended or at least purely from the stats line, is taking those bases in a fashion that is nice and clean, and that's something to be said there. So I think that's a nice looking stat line by any account. So. Well done.
Shout out to you, Brock, for having a 1.5 deny average as well.
Yeah, someone's got to put those shots in.
That's right. You got
someone's got to test the waters.
Up, you know? Yeah.
Be careful, guys. They'll get denials on you. Just play safe shots.
Brock doing it so Pug Salad doesn't have to.
That's right. That's the chump test. If you just put a shot on a base and like you get it, then it's like, all right. Chumps easy bases, but if you put the shot on, then you're like, all right, and they deny, you're like, all right, these guys know what they're doing. Be careful, lads. Alrighty, we got anything else we'd like to say about Curly Hands before we move on?
Nah.
You let me get off too easy.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, unforgivable. Need to lower that deny average room. All right, moving on. I don't want to say anything because I don't know what my denial average is, so I don't want to throw too much shade.
No. Hit me with it.
No, I got no. You're good. It's like honestly, 1.5 doesn't sound that bad after having like 2.0 for Gus before. So relatively, it seems
coming off the back of that makes it look okay.
It seems fun. All right, but no, well, very well done to you. Very well done to all the Helios babies. Doing very nicely on a Nexus comp, and yeah, we'll see you all back playing laser tag soon enough. 4th place, the Mepex boys predicted 2nd, down 2. We had Bonfire, Marmaduke, Zam, Memeless, and Ninja. Yeah, I guess I'll talk about the Mepex boys. We versed them quite a lot. I'm pretty sure they beat us more times than we beat them. They were having a really good tournament. They opened up the round robin like on top. You know, all obviously like very strong players. In terms of like how they played, they had Zam last lining red and green. They had Ninja was their main like kind of like I guess like
close door defender.
Like a close door defender. Memeless and Marmaduke opening up on the attack as usual, like Memeless in-game leader, Marmaduke opening batsman, and they had Bonfire on the doors. But they played Bonfire in blue as a last line because he was cracked in blue. He was very, very good in blue.
I did also run up against Bonfire last lining both green and red at one point as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he like would have filled in at some point, but I think their opening at least was Zam in that last line, red and green. And yeah, I mean, what can you say? They're like, you know, super good players. I think this is probably another case of what we were saying before, Brock, where like the meta initially was like more standard as like, because I feel like playing standard is just one of the better ways to figure out an arena.
It's how you start.
Yeah, because if you don't know how to defend with 3 or attack with 2 in an arena, then like I don't know. I feel like you're going to be in a lot of trouble, right? Right. So that's how like everyone starts, and I think this team is a very good team. Like the Apex boys in general. Obviously, they're missing most of Apex, but they still played relatively the same. Yeah, they're going to be very dominant in a standard game. We see that all the time. But I think they fell off as the comp went for 2 reasons. One, I don't think they adjust very well to those, like, you know, as soon as the other teams are doing like 5-man spreadies, field pointing, taking opportunistic bases. I don't think they do as well on those game states. And 2, I know Memeless actually got like really, really sick on the last day, and he was like,
I was going to say that as well.
You know, maybe there's like, it's one of those things where like Ninja is obviously a very, very capable in-game leader, and he maybe could have taken like swap roles with Memeless.
I think he did,
but it's like
towards the end, but it was something they hadn't practiced and weren't really prepared to do.
Yeah, I mean, they might have a few games. I mean,
that's what I got from speaking to them, like on the evening of the second day.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb's in the chat right now. Caleb, was in the last few games, was it you or was it Ninja that was doing the in-game lead, and when you were on death's door? Yeah, I mean, I know I train with these guys all the time. I know what they're capable of, and I know they were very disappointed that they didn't make the finals, because they definitely could have and deserved to be there, but you know.
I was actually going to say that I was like, not to specifically throw shade, but I actually think they played better than Aftershock for the majority of the competition, and it was
100%.
disappointing to see them get knocked out.
Yeah. No, I would agree with you that they were just doing a lot of things better than us.
I think you guys won the right game, but I think they had a better comp.
Yeah, Caleb's saying that he still captained most of it, and he definitely should have switched. But it's one of those things. It's like a gamble, you know. Even if the other person is competent, like you played like the whole rest of this tournament and all your training with one person captaining, switch it up. Is it gonna, you know what I mean? So it's a calculated risk. You know, it could have just as easily, like, Ninja like struggled to, like, you know, just like jump into the in-game lead position as well. But yeah, I think that was basically the story of the Apex boys, being super dominant, maybe not adjusting well to the more heavy defense, floaty, field pointy, opportunistic strats, and then Memeless like deciding to kick the bucket pretty much. Did you guys have any observations on the Memepex boys?
I mean, Bonfire hugely impressed me this comp. Like, fantastic last line when he was last lining. Like, he was, I think, the most difficult last line I had to deal with throughout the entire comp. Like, fantastic outside on a door, great in the mid. He like has an almost unorthodox method of shooting around walls in the mid that I think people could learn from. I don't know. I'm very, very impressed there. I heard apparently they thought red was their worst base, but I remember specifically reffing one of their red games, and I thought it was really well oiled. It was strong. Zam was a great last line for them, like communicated loads of information through, and played the mechanics of the last line position really, really well. I wonder, and actually watching Zam last line for Memepex makes me wonder. I don't know, have they got a dedicated last line? And because I actually don't know who it is off the top of my head, and maybe if there's someone who could train to fill that position as a dedicated last line, that might be like one of the things they need going into Albury.
Yeah, like the actual Apex team. So I think their team's actually, I don't know. Caleb's in the chat now. Caleb, can I leak what your roster is for Albury? You let me know.
Interesting comment in the chat from they supposedly never won from red.
So no. So I remember, I'm pretty sure in the last Golden game they had color choice and they gave us red.
Fools.
No, I mean they just didn't like red. They pretty sure they chose blue.
So
fools.
I think they like blue.
We had the same though. Like in our knockout game, we got gifted red right up the back end because the team, I think it was Heretics, actually chose blue, and we're like, but why?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
That's such an Apex moment to hate them. They're like such a dominant
This is the
base.
most dominant base. We don't like it.
So, well, I mean, seriously, like, through the competition, especially through Ascensions, we actually saw that a bunch. We saw a bunch of people make some really interesting choices, picking blue over red, which was actually surprisingly common. And a couple of teams actually picking green, which was bizarre.
Green was our favorite base. I think we were
Oh,
better.
was it?
I think red. We played red well, but I think we played green better than we played red because of some of the lines.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, when seeing the picks through Ascensions, you wouldn't necessarily be able to pick the statistics in some cases. Obviously, red was the dominant base from a statistics point of view, but the amount of people that actually did pick blue over red when they had the first choice was surprising.
How many of them won the game though?
I don't know. I would need to go back and have a look.
I don't think many did. I don't think many of the people who picked blue won.
So if you picked blue, you lost still.
So I think the teams that picked blue, even though they thought it was a good pick, lost the game from blue. I don't think that of the teams that picked blue, and I mean even we picked green and lost from green. So
Yep. I remember seeing that and going, "Wow, that was an interesting first pick."
Yeah, I think to go back to meme packs, I'm pretty sure they chose blue because, I mean, obviously they just like weren't getting it together on red, but Robin or Bonfire was like insane under the blue base, and I think that was a lot of their decision making for that. And then anyway, so Memeless has given me the green light to leak the Apex roster for Albury.
Spicy.
But we have Memeless still captaining, Marmaduke, Bonfire, and they now have Ninja, No Idea, and Axiom. So Spack, Benson, and Shaky are off, gone yonder, and so it's a pretty different team actually, and I think Seth and Jesse or No Idea and Axiom will bring, and Ninja obviously will I don't know. I think they'll actually bring a lot to this Apex team, and I'm really excited to see how their playstyle changes and evolves.
The fresh face Apex.
And on the topic of the last line, No Idea was the last line for us in these Albury bases because he played with us in like Aftershock at Prenats, and he was doing very, very well. So that might solve their last line problem,
maybe,
I guess, because even though Robin is insane in the bases, like you said,
I think he's better utilized outside of it.
Yeah, he's also really, really good as a mid. So
I think that's the same thing going right back to Camster on Outlaws. I think great last line, sure, but I think he's better utilized elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. But anyway, and then also another bit of that is Spack and Benson always really struggled to make it to training for work and whatever. But all the players on the team now are players that are consistently at training. So Apex will actually be able to train as 5, which is very nice. But anyway, we've been talking about these guys for a bit. I think we'll talk about a standout player from each of yours, and then we'll move on. So, Firebird, I'll let you go first.
I mean, the easy one is Bonfire. Just hugely impressed me this comp. I think the special runner-up or honorable mention is Zam, though.
Yep. Nickel, you got one?
I think normally I would try and argue for someone different, but Bonfire with a 2.07. I think that's the first time we've seen a 2 on the tag ratio. But that's paired with good destroys, relatively minimal denies, and a really high average score, for someone who clearly was last lining for parts of it. So kudos and well played on that part.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'll pick Bonfire as well. The stats are too good. They're very impressive, and the ratio of destroys versus denies is very clean as well. So yeah, well done to Robin, to Bonfire. Had a good comp, and keep training, and I don't know. This team definitely
one to watch out for.
Definitely one to watch out for, especially with these roster changes. Very exciting, very refreshing for them, and they'll be able to train with 5. So cool. Anything else about these guys?
Not from me.
No. 3 more to go, guys.
Alrighty, moving on to the top 3. Third place, Aftershock. That's me. That's the boys.
It's you.
Not 4th.
Bricked 4th. We made it, baby. Nah, I think we actually we are very good at dodging 4th at Prenats. It's just we need to do it at the big thing. That's what we're gonna do. But yeah, we had obviously myself, Holmes, No Idea, Mikey, Benny, and Beefy. I don't know. I don't really want to talk about my own team. Brock, throw some shade. Let's go.
I don't know. You guys beat me every time we played you. I couldn't touch you guys.
Did we?
Yeah, I didn't.
I feel like you beat us.
Nah, we didn't take a game off of you.
Oh.
You've been my Achilles heel team for like 2 years now, and that's
true,
persisted
like
this
Storm
comp. Yeah.
What are you doing to him? What do you why do you beat them so much? Come on.
I don't know. I know. I think we dropped a little bit, so I didn't even get to see you guys too many times in game, and I think I only played you maybe once, and that was in the game that we got the third in, and then I don't think I even reffed many of your games, like maybe one or two, but they weren't from your base, so I was reffing alternate bases.
You saw Benny for like 5 seconds. He came in, got the base, and then he's bugging off. So yeah,
I did see Benny. Benny did have his tag ratio actually there looks a lot better than the tag ratios I saw during games. I saw like a lot of the tag ratios I saw from Benny were pretty rough. So he must have figured something out and turned it around to have pulled it back to a 0.98.
Yeah, he definitely Benny after every game was like, oh, really need to work on my field porting.
Just work on not getting shot.
he was struggling in that department, but yeah, Benny actually had a 2.0 base average up until halfway through Cascade 1, I think. So he was getting in the bases, and he was taking most of them like very clean as well. Like only a 0.5 denied average over the course of the tournament. So
I want to call out the deny statistic here. You're one of the first teams, I think, that have got like 3 people with a positive, like a 1 point something denies average, which would suggest people trying to crack your base paid for it really, really dearly. I don't know whether or not that's something you felt in game. You felt like your defense was good. But I don't think there's no other team that has that sort of statistic, I don't think, across the entire field. Yeah, there's one. A Leviathan also has a similar statistic on their denies, but not by much. I don't know. Is that something you guys found these bases to your playstyle? Or maybe the outside of these bases to your playstyle that you can push people, you can get people in?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the denies that we got on people, I'm not really sure. I don't actually. Yes, we got a lot more than I realized. I think. Yeah, I guess just being used to hitting like Nexus phases was a bit of it. I know probably a significant amount of my denials was off the back of hitting a phaser. And I think also like Aftershock in general put a lot of like mental focus on like actively trying to hit phases in preparation for Helios 2, because it was like, well, if we can hit on Nexus, it's just going to be easier on Helios 2. So I guess like our ability to hit phases was a bit of it. And I guess a bit of it also was just like abusing like the cross shots through the base. Like I think Beefy got quite a few denials from the back door of green, for instance, like as people are like coming in, putting a shot in, and he's like, because we were, yeah, our comms were really quite good, I think, and they were loud enough that the door defenders could hear each other. So Beefy's on the back door, he hears me saying like front now. Maybe you see Sespin shot out, he's like ready to like shoot through the base. Otherwise, yeah, I don't really know where all those denies came from, but we were doing all right. And I think I didn't realize how clean, like on average, our base takes were as well. I wouldn't know what to chalk that up to either. I guess
probably not getting shot.
I mean, that helps, right? I guess a bit of it would be just used to like the phase of discipline you need on Nexus. So like the other side of the coin, and Mikey just being a very good lead attacker and in-game leader as well. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I do want to shout out Seth. No idea. So the guy decided to before we even started playing games, I'm pretty sure, decided to like hit up the boxing bag arcade machine thing.
Is that how that happened?
Yeah. And he gave it a good wallop, but like he decided to like follow through all the way to like the back panel, and his hand like blew up like crazy. And he was a champion, and he played all through it. Which I mean, it helped that we were going to play in the last line position anyway. So it was like a little bit less strain on his hand, I guess. But it turns out he went and got an X-ray, and the dude separated like his like knuckle from his finger or something crazy like that. So his hand's like full broken. Potentially surgery and stuff. But the guy just decided to do that, and then also like do very well on like the last line position. So kudos to No Idea for doing that. Anyway, what else do I want to shout out? I'll shout out Benny as well. I think this was his first exposure to like playing at the top tier against like players that are obviously really, really good. And all through the tournament, even in the finals, he was getting like lots of really good bases, really clean bases. So I think we were all very impressed with Benny's ability to. I said it a million times, but like as soon as you put a shot on the base, it is the single like most high stress moment in a game, and he was able to like keep his cool, and like even when you've got players like Wax and Spider and Run and whoever like lunging at you, still being able to like finish those base takes. As someone that's not been exposed to the top tier before, it was very impressed, very impressed. Shout out Mikey as well. Aftershock, we've had Fuggin captaining for the last 2 years, so Mikey hasn't captained since 2020, and he's come back and he's done really quite well, like a very good destroy average, very clean base takes as well, as you can see, and he actually was getting some pretty crazy scores. Like he was walking out of games with like 14. I think he even got a 15k in one game. So I think that's something that Mikey struggled with. I mean, on average, you can see that he's like struggled with his tag ratio and score a bit. But I think something Mikey's always struggled with is being able to captain and keep up his tag ratio and score. But he had a bunch of games like this comp, even in like really hard games where he was getting very impressive scores. So I think it just shows like his evolution since he last captained in 2020 as well. And a bit of that is just being able to take that back seat and like just play as a player and develop his like mechanical skills for a while. And then lastly, we'll shout out Beefy, being the backdoor bitch, we'll call him. He was like our close door defender, and he was doing very well. Obviously only a 1.1% tag ratio there, but I think, it definitely felt like he was doing very well on those backdoors, which are inherently more like brawly, which plays into obviously he's like probably you would have to say like the Lord of the Rings GOAT, right? Like he's had the most finals appearances. He's been the most consistent WoW player. So those backdoors suited him very nicely.
So instead of shouting out all 5 of your team, who's the one you pick?
No, he didn't shout out the whole team, did he?
No, I didn't. I'm not going to.
He didn't shout out Benny?
I did.
Did he shout out?
He skipped himself. That was it.
That was the only one. Oh.
He did the cop-out answer and gave everyone a shout-out rather than picking one person.
Yeah. No, I don't want
to. I'm
not talking about myself, dude. You can talk about me if you like, but no. I think if I was to choose one player, I can't really choose between Seth and Benny. They were both very impressive in their own right. Like Seth historically has struggled with like lots of attitude issues and stuff. And I think that's been a lot of what's been holding him back, but I was very happy with his attitude at this tournament. So well done, Seth. Very impressed. Keep it up. Don't lose that attitude, because it'll get you far. And then Benny, like I said before, just keeping his cool and getting all these crazy bases in the face of like really, really good players. So I'm cheating and I'm choosing 2. So there you go.
We got it down from 4, so I'll take it.
True. I'm gonna shout out the boys. Come on.
I'll shout out Mikey. Mikey's my pick.
Oh yeah.
I think utmost respect for anyone who's come back after some time and is captaining, and that whole balancing the mechanical play and trying to make sure you keep that up while also calling a game is something that, again, and I've said it a couple of times tonight, if you haven't called a game, do it at home, do it in a training, get an appreciation for it, because it's not easy. It's really not. And doing both of those things at the highest level is even harder. So kudos to that.
Yeah, cool. I don't know. Anything else we want to say about Aftershock before we move on?
Nah, I'm done.
Nah.
And also, Brock, turns out I can throw shade at you for your deny average, bro. So I don't know. Just stop.
You missed your window. Talking about Aftershock now.
Alright, fair enough. So just disregard.
Oh dear.
Alrighty.
All right.
Moving on.
Number two.
Reload Cowards predicted 5th, up 3. Woo! Very nice.
Why were they predicted 5th?
We have Twinkles, Moldy, Celery, and Cheru. And why were they predicted 5th?
A genuine question. Not trying to take the piss when I say it, but it's an interesting one, right? Because you've got some players on there that have just come off nationals and proven themselves to be some of the scariest players to play against. Yep, different system, different maze, home maze, all of that jazz. What was the logic for 5th?
I think. I mean, in fairness, I distinctly remember the top 6 or 7 being really, really hard to place. And it was very easy for anyone to jump around that top 6. But I think I had them there just because obviously Runt and Twinkles had one of the most dominant tournaments we've ever seen in Hobart. And I guess the big question was are they going to be able to keep that up outside of their arena, no longer on the home system that they had an advantage on? And obviously they've proven that. I know a bit of it was I don't know. It's just all of the top 5 teams had some crazy players on it. So I think it was less commentary on Reload Cowards not deserving predicted 2nd, but just all the teams around them also deserving to be in the top 3. And you can only have so many in there. So it was real. The predictions for the top 6 for this tournament was probably the hardest predictions I've spent the most time going oh, this doesn't feel right, that doesn't feel right. So
I mean Runt and Twinkles clearly can back up what they showed us in Hobart. I feel like I didn't even see Celery at all this entire competition, so I don't think I can comment at all on Celery. I don't even know if he played the games against us when we played them, so I don't know where he was. I saw moments of brilliance from Cheru. I would see her 3 people on her door and she'd slap them around. Moldy was great on Nexus. I don't think anyone probably expected anything different from Moldy. Probably didn't have to cheat as much as he did in Hobart. But again, another team I played once, so I don't have too many notes.
Nicole, you got anything?
Well, we played them once, then we beat them. So scrubs.
Oh, did you? That's awesome.
I spent 12 minutes schooling the shit out of Twinkles. This is the game I walked out with a 15.7k game. Awesome. There's no logic as to how we won that. Well, why we won that game, and it was the most basic 2-3 game you could imagine as well. I think it's really interesting. Apart from Twinkles, they've got quite a consistently clean base take ability. But again, I didn't play them very much, so it was always watching from the outside. So it's always a little bit harder for me to kind of judge how they felt to play against. Because I suspect the one time we did was quite an anomaly. The team also seemed to gel fine outside of it. There was no you never saw them. I don't think I ever saw them walk out and be like get angry at each other or frustrated and things like that. They seemed always calm and collected. Seemed to have a plan going in most of the time. So that collected nature of it, even if it wasn't, it's obviously got a bit of a mixed bag for the team. Again, proving that, 5 good players is 5 good players, right? I'm clearly becoming a convert, Brock.
Got him.
I think level-headedness there, even on their rough games, they never seemed things. It was really interesting watching them in the finals, having a couple of rough games or games that maybe they didn't kind of push as hard as they needed to. And I don't know whether or not that was down to they thought they were ahead or further ahead than they were, or whether or not they were just struggling in game. Does that make sense?
So I think we talked about it afterwards, because obviously a big part, for those of you that haven't been in a grand final or a 3-game series, it's like there's a whole skill set of like, because obviously you don't get to see the scores, trying to figure out how well you did versus the other teams. And so Aftershock, actually we got all the positions right for the games, but we didn't realize like the first game how far we were behind, which was like, that was our bad. But I think talking to the Reload Cowards guys after the finals, they didn't realize that they had won the first game. I think they thought that the Rampatope stomped the first game from memory. And so their first game, they were like 4K average ahead. I have it here. And so we knew that. So on our red game, the second game, we were like, all right, we're going to focus out the Reload Cowards and give them a bad game to kind of balance it out a bit. And we won that. But I think Reload Cowards didn't realize they had a good first game. And so going into the last game, they were like, crap, we need to like pull back from like 2 like not wins. And so they did like a pretty drastic strategy. And that was a bit of the story of that.
I'm curious because I know they got first color choice and deferred to counterpick, and I'm curious whether that hurt them more in this maze.
For the finals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they ended up on red in their first game anyway, so
yeah, I wonder would they have picked that if they did choose their colors rather than counterpicking?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I personally am not very.
I don't have
just
finals experience really,
yeah.
so I'm doing this off of like theory and
I just listen to what Beefy
thought
says,
projects.
but I think there is like an idea of like not having your first game be your best color or your best game.
You don't want to put a target on your back right away either.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a. I don't know. I'm hopeless with this stuff. I just listen to what Beefy says and I go, yes, sir.
There's also an element of trying to pick into, I guess, defer a choice so that you are playing hopefully your better color against the team you think you need to beat. And how you roll that dice is a little bit up in the air, but there's an element of that as well. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. Statistics across this team are super strong, though we do see some significantly lower averages on Cellar and Cheru, obviously, but obviously some very, very high averages out of Runt and Twinkles. So balancing that out a bit compared to some teams which sort of sit like with a range of like 9 to 7 across the whole team. Twinkles with a relatively high denied rate. We saw him try and take bases pretty freely there. So clearly didn't hurt his score that much. But
I'll actually quickly shout out Twinkles. I think he's the best player at hitting phases. The guy just has like a sixth sense for like where their phase is going to be and exactly when it comes out. It's not like he's like spamming it either. It's just like one shot, like bing, like just as the phase is coming out to shoot him. So he's got a very good sense of like the timing of when he appears or like he activates versus when someone shows their phaser. I know in the finals, in the first game, I don't think we dropped a base because of it, but we very nearly did, like right off the rip, because Twinkle just came around a corner and just like insta pre-fired a phaser and got Seth out of last line like straight away. And I was like, and then like we managed to clear him out. And then I said to Seth after, I was like, Twinkles is very good at doing that. Maybe just don't shoot straight away. And he was like, yeah. And then after that, we did much better. But yeah, shout out to Twinkles for being a phaser shot madman.
I think the only other thing I've really got is like they had a very, very good mentality. Like they cared enough to do well, but they didn't care enough to get fired up or angry or like upset if things didn't work out. Like they just played really, really well, and they cared enough to play really, really well the whole comp, and that's what they did.
Yeah, 100%.
Lovely team to play against and talk to afterwards as well. So, and it's nice seeing those top tier teams being like that, willing to talk and chat after the fact and things like that as well. I think it's always nice. It's better. It's always good for the scene.
100%. Well, gentlemen, we got one more team after this, so let's make our picks for stand-up player for Reload Cowards, and we'll move on.
I mean, I gotta say, Runt. Like being able to do that while running a team is disgusting, and I think like some sort of crime.
Filthy.
Yeah.
Filthy.
Yeah. Made even worse by the fact that half the time he was in his own base for the first 4 minutes of the game, and he does that in like 8 minutes. Like just, and that makes me just disgusting is the best word. My vote is for Twinkles only because I beat the crap out of him. It's probably the only time I'm going to do it. So I'm going to. And he complimented me in game as part of it, like good fun, sort of jovial. Exchange in game because neither of us knew why it was happening. So kudos to him.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to go with Run. It's kind of those. He answered the question. Is he going to be able to keep up what he's doing outside of his own arena? Not. Yes, he will.
Yes is the answer. Yep.
Yep.
Cool beans. All right, well, yeah, very nicely done by the Reload Cowards. Let's move on to our last team, and we'll wrap up the show. First place, Rampatotes, predicted third. We had Spider, Wax, Whippet, Mad Cans, and Cyrex. Did either of you have anything you would like to say off the rip?
5 decent players makes a decent team. I don't know. I wouldn't. It's really interesting seeing them play through the tournament. Was really odd because I wouldn't have picked them to win it through the tournament. And maybe I'm just naive, but I just watching them through the screen, through the stream and things like that. I wouldn't necessarily have picked it, but they clearly did do very, very well. And part of that, I think, we talk about averages and tag ratios, and we do see a 2.37 here because Whippet's arguably the best last line defender currently playing. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, they didn't look this good, but they clearly were. Like, I don't know. You guys played these teams more. I think we played them once. So.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I love Whippet, but I'm going to throw some shade. Like, definitely not the best last line currently playing. Like, good last line. She did really, really well all comp. I think she's one of the best at this comp. I was reffing finals, and I do distinctly remember watching the green game, and I saw a number of issues. And I know it's like this is also Whippet's first time seeing any high tier, seeing a finals, all of that stuff. So I mean, like, I will excuse it, but I think there was definitely like some missed comms. There was some like poor footwork that resulted in not being able to switch where you're shooting quick enough, that resulted in bases going down. Like there was I heard her at one point coming to Cyrex, who was out the back door of green looking for, like, she clearly needed to reload. Cyrex has called back that, yep, she's there. And then she very quietly just said, I need to reload. Cyrix hasn't heard her. No one's done anything about it. She got shot and they immediately dropped a base, and they had well and truly enough time to negate that. And I mean, at the end of the day, it didn't impact their final score, but I think definitely just got a little bit rattled come finals. I think still played well, but I think the pressure of the top end got to her a little bit.
Can I throw something out? And this is genuinely an open question. Do we think that may have been, and what we're seeing there is, I guess, augmented or made worse by the fact that this isn't necessarily the team? Like it is a mixed team, and I'm saying this not as a mixed teams are bad, but there are different sets of comms. There is a learning experience there between players, especially from players from different states, where the play can be quite different. Do we think that might be a component part of it, or something that kind of like compounds that? Is that maybe what I was seeing? Is that compounded that slightly, those miscomms and things like that? As I said, they didn't look like they were playing as well as they did. They clearly were in the end, but I don't know. It's a thought. That's all.
Yeah, I think the comms, like different comms between different states, definitely used to be more of a thing. But I think nowadays, like all of the top players are pretty much using all the same comms, and a lot of it's the same. So I don't think. Yeah, I think the issues they had with comms was less to do with it being mixed teams and stuff.
I don't think there was like a glaring issue with missed comms. I think there was an instant of missed comms that I saw, that because they are the winning team, I'm going to pick on because I can. It was like overall, I think they were very reliable and very strong and didn't have a lot of missed comms. I think they were like generally very good.
Perhaps poor articulation on my part. Comms one thing, but the I guess the understanding of where your players are going to be, how they play, those nuanced components of the calls expected, when there's going to be silence, when there's not, because you play with the other player a lot. And that's something that at the top tier, any breakdown in that is going to open up pieces for attack. It'll open up opportunities. And maybe that's what I meant more than pure comms, as in calls. Sorry, my poor articulation on my part. But
I think a lot of the top teams nowadays, they all have one door defender that just like goes silent, just buggers off for no reason. I guess there is a bit of, when you play with that person enough, you learn to, like, when you're last line, you're like, okay, I'm gonna watch that guy's door when nothing's happening, because they're more likely to bugger off. But I think the instances of it happening were few and far between.
I agree. I'm only harping on it because this is the team that won, and I haven't got a whole lot else to pick on. Like, I think as a general rule, like the whole comp was fairly flawless as far as like those things go. I think there's a familiarity thing that comes with playing with one another, but I don't think that was much. I think there was a minor issue for them on the first day, and I think they'd had it almost completely ironed out by the second day. I actually stayed with Cyrix and Madcans for Prenats 1. Shock and I were the four of us were in a room together, so I did get to talk to them, and I do remember hearing them discuss like how they were making adjustments to like gel better and fit together as a team. And I mean, it sounded like it all went very smoothly. I think they all had a pretty good time.
Yeah, and we were bloody going through the haystack to try and find something bad to say. I will shout out Whippet, and that I think from my experience, like attacking the bases in the last lines, I think she had the single best phaser discipline. I think on Nexus, the phaser discipline is less about, like on H2, phaser discipline looks like holding your shot for a second and then shooting, or like half a second, whatever it is. But on Nexus, phaser discipline just looks like really quickly like whipping it out and then funny that And then, basically the exposure time of your phaser is very, very, very small. It's only enough for your shot to come out and it comes back, and it only comes out far enough for your shot to come out and it comes back. And you're not like overextending your phaser, like overreaching. And I think she, from what I saw, had the best phaser discipline on Nexus. So that was really impressive. There was a bunch of times where we would set up a pin, one player on each door. You know, classic, one person's going to go in to draw out a shot, and then the other person's going to shoot their phaser, and it's like easy. But yeah, we missed like a bunch of shots on Whippet's phaser, so she was doing well with that. I guess I probably played this team the most. So in terms of how they played, especially in the finals, they were one of the teams that really embraced that like more spready, field pointy strat, and then taking like opportunistic bases, I guess. Mad Ken's doing Mad Ken's tings, like running through the like always in like the middle of arena. You know, it made it uncomfortable for you to, especially in the finals, to like push out to field pointing positions, because like you always knew like he could just be right around the corner about to run in. So he had a very strong presence in the arena, and that like kind of kept you on your toes a bit. And then yeah, I know we definitely dropped bases off the back of like our door defenders pushing up field pointing positions and him like finding a pathway to sneak through. So
yeah, I know Wax got a ton of opportunistic bases as well. From what I heard, I remember like hearing several stories that pertain to like, oh, I thought Wax was at my door, and then I checked, he wasn't. I saw him coming back from getting a base, or I saw him like duck over to a base after a reload and he'd pick a base up, and like I think he like they gave him a long leash and he abused it a bit. So
yeah, for sure.
And I know they put Spider in like and pushed him to play a little more aggressively than he traditionally has. And like if you look at tag ratio, score ratio, like he excelled doing that as well. So he did a very good job there. I know he last lined a little bit.
Remember's doing well.
A little bit. Did they read the finals better than the other two teams?
Yeah, I think they definitely had So we, like, Aftershock got the positions right, but the scores wrong in the first game. I think Reload Cowards had the positions wrong from the first game. And then, but I think, I think they had the positions and probably, like, the feel of the scores, like, a bit better than... And that
I think you've also got to, like, give credit, like, Mad Cans and Cyrex both, like, each being some of the smartest players in the game at the moment.
Biggest nerds, you mean.
Big nerds.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what else to say about these guys. They obviously had a super dominant tournament. I think they were like second in round robin, and then I'm pretty sure they were like first. And then they were the second team to make it into the grand finals, and then ended up getting, I think they got first. What did they get? They got second first was their record in the finals. So,
and their final game was a bit of a monster game, was it?
And their final game was
their final game was nuts. Like it was truly, like, yeah. Hence the question: like, did they read those finals better than the other teams? Did they know they needed to go hard that game, or was that just we're probably in a pretty good position? We're now playing red.
Just coming back to the. Oh. Sorry, you go.
No, you went. I'm done.
Oh, I was just gonna say, just coming back to the like color choice or deferring color choice. Cyrex has had in chat getting first pick for colors in finals really helped. So interesting point.
Different people, interesting kind of logic. It'd be great to. I think we had we saw Runt. I think somewhere in the chat potentially. Did I see Runt in the chat?
I think I've seen him.
I don't think I've seen him.
Who did I see? Maybe not. But yeah, the preference for different captains and different coaches and captains and players to pick or defer that choice in the finals. That would be a fascinating conversation to have as to why.
Yeah, it was Cyrex saying that Runt and Twinkles always defer the color choice.
Yeah,
they did it for every single tournament in Hobart. They deferred the color choice.
But also quietly happy to see a team that's a bit of a mixed bag that's not purely the home site. And it's going to be obviously really interesting to see because obviously this isn't Rampage, not quite, I don't think, come nationals. So it'll be interesting to see how this team or its notional next iteration for Prenats 2 and 3 is going to go, especially as I imagine Madcans and Syrex go back to their own state teams.
Yeah, I mean, I heard from Spider that they, Rampage was initially planning on splitting for all of the Prenats, but I think they've been having some trouble like getting training in at home, so they might play all the Prenats together now.
Spider, give me a call. We'll work it out, man. Come use the site. I don't make money off training, but I'd rather you guys be training. I'd rather the New South Wales scene north of Canberra, if you're struggling, get down.
Nichols the guy. Nichols the man. Let's make a pick for standout player. And I guess we'll wrap up the show. So you boys go first.
I think I made my call. I want to give it to Whippet. I thought I thought she played really well for that last line. That tag ratio is nuts. And again, that position can be mentally draining. So kudos with it. Take it.
I think I'll give an honorable mention to Whippet. I think she did really, really well playing in the top end and like playing far above where she's had experience playing before. I think she adapted really well. She picked it up straight away. I think like huge shout out there. Stuff for my guys, I'm going to give a shout out to Wax. I think Wax played really well, and it's nice to see Wax playing like outside of Catalyst and playing just as well. It's just cool to watch.
I don't know. It's hard. I'm gonna choose Madcans just for the for me personally, the sheer amount of like presence he had in the arena. I also pretty sure I had like we'll say 5% success rate in duels, even when I was the active player on Nexus. That guy was in my head, set up cam rent free. So he was definitely my boogeyman player for the tournament. So I'll give him a shout out for that. Anything else we want to say about Rampatopes before we wrap up the show?
There's an interesting question in chat. What does Aftershock look like for Nats?
Yeah, well, I'll stop sharing my screen so you can see lovely faces a little bit bigger. So if anyone in the chat has any questions, send them in now. We'll answer them, and then we'll wrap up the show. But in terms of Aftershock, so yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have heard, but Fuggen is going on a 6-month exchange to Japan for uni. So he's not going to be able to. Yeah, very cool for him. It's a big opportunity. So he's not going to be at nationals. And then Chuch is also elected to take either the year off completely or to just play on like a less intense team, like a team with less expectation for like training and stuff. She plays around with quitting every year, and then I think she's actually
she's Adelaide's Wax.
Yeah, I guess so. So but a bit better, obviously. So she won't be coming to Albury most likely. We'll see if she makes a comeback afterwards, but who knows? It's a long time away. In the interim, Mikey is now the in-game leader, as you would have seen at Prenats. So we still got Mikey, we got Beefy, myself. Dossie's back from his big trip, so your boy's back. And we've picked up Jesse from Adrenaline, and we confirmed today, I think, we've picked up Benny. So, yeah, obviously, Fuggen and Chuch are going to be very hard people to replace.
Big shoes to fill.
They're very big shoes to fill, but I think Jesse and Benny have like really good attitudes, some of the best attitudes in Adelaide at the moment in terms of just like learning from losses and like not getting tilted and stuff and keeping a positive mindset. So Benny's also funny as hell. So yeah, I have lots of faith in them that they're gonna do just fine. In terms of like, I have no idea how we're actually gonna play. We haven't had a session. I think actually our training session this week will be the first one where it's all of us together for the first time. So yeah, I've got no idea what that's gonna look like. Yeah, lots of movement in Adelaide. Obviously, Apex has had a big shakeup. I'm expecting we'll probably only send 4 teams to Albury. That's my guess. But yeah, I don't know. Is there any other questions in the chat? Wax, will we ever finish making that maze? Next Thursday, bro. 12 p.m. See you there. Yeah, and I think Spider's made a note. There is a lot of big changes, like in all of the states, from what I've heard. So it's going to be a very, very interesting Nats, but I think it's also going to be very refreshing, as well. I'm super excited.
Yeah, it should be good. I actually really, really like the arena. I'm super excited to play in nationals in there and spend more time in it.
Yeah, 100%. I think when I was thinking about it, I was like, man, there wasn't really a single thing I didn't like about the arena, except that green definitely felt very weak, and not just like in an ethereal sense. Like the green base was by far the easiest to crack, in my opinion. And also with how the meta was playing out with like lots of field pointing in the middle, it felt like green had the least agency over the middle of the arena compared to red and blue. Like I remember I was like the front door defender in green, which was obviously like super exposed to the middle of the arena, and it was really hard. So I guess, giving, I don't know what that looks like, but giving green some more agency of the direct center of the arena, because I think the green to red push was like really good, really strong.
Yeah.
And that like there was that long sight line from like the red front door to blue back door. That was really good as well. But yeah, more agency over the middle of the arena for green, and just like make some tweaks to the interior of the base to make it a little bit easier to last line.
Yeah.
Just because red and blue were like hands down like way easier to last line than green. So
I am genuinely intrigued to see how it plays with H2. I do wonder whether or not we're going to see a significant difference in play, given how much the phaser changes sort of we experience at nationals. I just wonder.
I think it'll change the way the maze plays, but not drastically. But I think it will shake it up a little. It'll be different from what we experienced.
I don't think it will require a maze change in relation to the new phases, and I think that's really cool. Green base, I think, does need a change. I think I was talking to a couple of people. I think green needs to be shuffled a little bit to be a little bit more like the other ones. It's too far removed from the other two bases from a stylistic and play point of view. You either need to move the other two to that style, or the vice versa. Like it's too far removed from it.
I think when I think about this, like a key thing with like designing interior of a base on H2, if you want it to be like one person could last line quite effectively with good comms, is the distance from where they are versus where the baseline is needs to be longer than you could get away with on H Pro or even Nexus. Just because on H2, if the distance is too short, as I like come around the corner or as I activate as an attacker, I can pull a shot, right? Which basically means like they can't present their phaser for like the first part of me entering the base. And if they hold their shot and the distance is too small, now I'm like right next to them, or I've gotten to a position which makes it really awkward for them. So yeah, that's the big difference I think H2 makes. I think blue and red will play relatively the same. I think last lines will, in general, struggle more in those bases than they maybe did on Nexus, but I think the best players will still make the adjustments they need to on H2. For sure. The one thing I am worried about is that red, like the back wall of red.
Super metal shiny.
Yeah, so there was some packs on Nexus that would like, you could be like front door of red, someone's like in the V or the default spot, whatever you want to call it, in red, and you would shoot the back wall, and it would get them like really easy. Not all the packs could do it, because obviously Nexus has a lot of like variance in the IR levels and stuff. But I think on H2, I'd be interested to see how easy those reflex shots are to hit. And if they are easy to hit, then that's going to be like a big issue, and that needs to be, from a competitive standpoint, need to be dealt with.
Hopefully, an easy fix, though, relatively speaking.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, cool. I don't know, boys. You got anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up the show?
Nah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
No.
Can I make balloons again? Maybe not. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I have no idea.
That was wild. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Brock and or Firebird and Nickel for jumping on. It's been a pleasure. I'll get you gentlemen to guess how long we've been running for. Don't look at the time. And if you've already seen it, then you suck.
2 hours and 36 minutes.
Oh, I was going to say 2:32.
We are at 3 hours.
God damn.
Yeah, we blew over the 2.5 hour goal, but that's okay.
I mean, it's closer to 2:36 by the time that Brock got on.
That's true.
I'm very sorry. I thought I had way more time than I did. I was like
did you get caught out by the time zone thing, or were you just drying your hair for ages?
Ages and ages. No, I did get caught out by the time zone thing. I was like, yeah, no, this is the time. I've got heaps of time. And then I saw the message and like half an hour. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. I'm gonna have a quick shower, and then it just stopped me.
Nice work.
Yeah.
No, you're
fashionably late.
You had me sweating for a bit, but we made it in the end. All right. Thank you very much to everyone in the chat. It's been a good one. The next stream, I believe, will be on Thursday again, where we're going to continue with our arena-based design shenanigans. So I think we had a good time on the last one.
3 doors. 3 doors on bases.
3 doors. Yeah, the back door one. Anyway, that's a can of worms.
4 doors. Dead door and 3 others.
All right. It's happening. Anyway, so yeah, if you want to just hang out, have some shenanigans, have a say on what this perfect arena design will look like, then jump in. I'll like, once it's done, I'll like post it or something and everyone can make fun of me. What else is planned? Oh yeah, there's the Friday night. I'm doing an arena tier list stream with Wax and Run. And I can't remember the time. That's on the LSA group. That'll be a bit of fun. Throw some shade at bad bases. But nah, it'll be good.
Can we have a sneak peek? What's the best arena?
Rip apart my maze, guys. Come on. Actually, in all seriousness, for anyone who's on that stream, and if my arena does come up, my boys and girls, and just generally staff and players, do get a chance to rebuild the maze at Christmas. So throw some shade. Maybe you'll give them some ideas to rebuild.
The plan right now is just Zoltak arenas from 2016, because that's when Wax started. But if we blow through them really quick, then I'll add like other arenas as well. We'll see how we go. We'll see how we go.
I'll make a special recommendation for the Box Hill Arena that's no longer open.
Oh, no.
A wonderful experience.
Oh, jeez. 7 stories. I don't even want to think about it. What else? Oh, yeah, there's also... Oh, yeah, sorry. So there's a stream on Saturday, which was going to be like just a bit me talking about the things that I and my team think about, like going into a new arena and like the main things you want to focus on and stuff. So that's going to be a bit more of like a instructional type stream. My hope is it won't go for too long either. But the time I had for that was like 6 p.m. or 6:30 p.m. My time. But I'm going to have to move that back to like 4 p.m. Because I totally didn't forget about our friend's birthday plans. I suck. Anyway.
Life is hard.
Life is hard. But anyway, we're making that push for Twitch affiliate. We're going to get there, and things are going to be fine and dandy and awesome. All right. I've had enough talking. See you later, guys. Catch you
See you
in the next
guys.
stream, and thank
See
you
ya.
for joining me once again, boys.